Call the meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everybody to the special board meeting for the Vacaville Unified School District. Dr. Jane, approval of the agenda. Any changes to the agenda whatsoever?
No changes.
Fantastic. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I'll move it.
Second.
Moved by Malberg, second by Wyndham. Roll call vote.
Ms. Sally, I see you. That's a yes vote. Thank you. Mr. Wyndham?
Yes.
Mr. Kitsis?
Yes.
Mrs. Stacy?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mrs. Malberg?
Yes.
And Mr. Jansen?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, item number 5, comments from the floor. We are going to go ahead and open up the chat so people can have the ability to put their name on the list. Please, welcome to those that are on Zoom. If once the chat is open, you can go ahead and open it. Once it's open, it's designed primarily just or solely just to put your name on there if you'd like to speak on the item. We're going to leave this open for about 3 to 5 minutes so we make sure that everybody has an opportunity to have their ability to put their name on there. So it'll be a little uncomfortable and quiet in here for a few, but other than that, we want to make sure they have the opportunity. Okay. Let's do this. People on Zoom, when we open the chat, we would appreciate that it is solely for putting the names on the list of people who would like to speak. Any type of profanity is not allowed. If that continues, we will not allow you to speak from Zoom. So please, for the courtesy of people that would like to speak, watch your language. And please be courteous. I'll still give it a few more minutes. You can open that up. This is Kathy. I would like to speak on graduation. Was that you? Can I see you for a second? No. Never been a principal, never won't get detention, you didn't do any of that stuff. So. Okay, just for some clarifications on comments from the floor, tonight we're only allowing, by the Brown Act, comments from the floor that items on the agenda. So if anyone's on Zoom and they're wishing to speak about graduation, this is not the appropriate forum to do that. We can't allow that. We'd be violating the Brown Act, which we're held accountable to. It's not because we don't want to hear from you. It's just how the meeting is set up by the law that we're not allowed to. Okay.
I will say that the meeting that you had last week, your Zoom, your YouTube does not, you can't hear anything that anyone says on Zoom. So hopefully you'll correct that so that all these people that are about to speak will be heard for the public to hear if they wish to go back to this meeting, because you cannot hear, that's just an FYI. Okay.
IT department there at the end. Thank you very much.
That's important for you. Okay, thanks.
So unfortunately, somebody said even worse than a cuss word. Totally inappropriate, not acceptable. So we are working on a workaround to allow people that want to participate, such as you folks that took the time to come here, to have the ability to speak. So if you'd be patient with us while our IT works on that, we'd appreciate it. Do you have a list of names, or
Those that you have there are the folks that are seated here. You want to
start with those?
And I'll start loading the list for the Zoom, okay?
Fantastic. So item number 5, comments from the floor, items on the agenda. Seeing that we're going to have a lot of speakers tonight, we're going to limit your time to 2 minutes instead of the 3 minutes, and that will allow for the folks on Zoom to have an opportunity to speak as well.
That's his job this time. He's the clerk.
You can keep time for me, please? And then do you have your little cards?
They're in the drawer.
Oh, yeah, you can use your phone.
Do I have them? Did I just drop? Nope. Aha.
You ready to go? All right, fantastic. Let's go ahead and get going. And I'm going to apologize if I mispronounce your names, but Mindy Bowl, is it? Correct? Bowley, sorry.
No worries.
Welcome. How are you this evening?
Thank you, I'm good. Can I take this off to talk?
By all means.
Okay,
Thank
thank you. Thank you. Good evening. My name is Mindy Bowley, and my children have attended school in the district for the last 16 years. Prior to that, I'm a product of the Vacaville Unified School District. Both my parents are, my grandparents are. So we've been around Vacaville and the school district for a long time. I understand the difficult position you guys are in to try to decide how to handle the upcoming school year, knowing that no decision you make will make everyone happy. Recognizing the countless hours you have spent on making this decision you're here to make tonight, I feel that you do have to spend a little bit of time to talk about the graduates that graduated last year. Vacaville Unified School District has had an impressive history of putting forth, or of getting things accomplished by having a what can we do attitude. That's why you guys have done workshop after workshop with the parents, with the district, with the public health official about what you can do to make this work for next year's school year. I think you need to put a fraction of that effort to also get that into the graduation for the seniors that graduated.
Ma'am, if
I'm
you're speaking
saying-
about graduation.
No, I'm saying that if you are here today at all to consider opening the schools in any fraction, in any fashion of having students in the classroom with teachers, you're putting a greater risk than anything that was put in play or proposed to you by Dr. Shamia. So I think that you have a number of parents, a number of willing volunteers to help you come up with a plan that is safe, that you need to do, just like you have people here
And
today
again, ma'am, I think
that are
you're speaking about
for it.
graduation and not
I'm
about
speaking
reopening
about
the
both. My
schools.
husband is a teacher in this district, so don't discount my ability to think about what's happening with opening schools. That affects me personally as well. I just think that you need to look at all of it. The school district has been great for many reasons, and it's because you have an attitude of what can we do.
Thank you,
So
ma'am.
don't dismiss
Your
that.
time is up. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Could you, did you flash the cards? Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mindy. Julia, Meek?
Hi, good evening. My name is Julia Meek. I will be a junior at Wolstewood High School this school year. I wanted to speak tonight on reopening schools. It's really important that we get back to school full-time with no restrictions. The virus so rarely affects children, and even if it did, the survival rate is 98%. The flu is worse. My friends and I need to be in school full-time. Our mental health and physical well-being and future in education depends on it. I also wanted to ask that you seriously consider the dangers of wearing masks for long periods of time, and the fact that they are useless. I know for sure my parents will not allow me to wear a mask to school, and I agree with that. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Julia. Appreciate it. Shauna Moriarty? Hello.
Hi. My name is Shauna Moriarty, and my family represents 3 generations of graduates from Vacaville Unified School District. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. The current suggestion for high school students to only attend school 2 days a week is not acceptable. Our kids, especially high schoolers, need interaction with their peers, in-person instruction from their teachers, and oversight by their coaches and mentors. These are our young people who will very soon be entering the real world. In the real world, we live in Vacaville, California, in Solano County. This is not New York, Florida, or even Los Angeles. We must not make decisions for our community based on statistics in the rest of the country. Statistically, our COVID numbers are low. Our testing is high, and our positivity rate is well below state guidelines. Yes, safely returning to school should be a top priority, but instead of focusing on how to keep kids home, which, by the way, they will not and they are not, we should be focusing on how to accommodate the majority who choose to return to campus. Several districts near and far have offered their own solutions. In Colorado, for example, they are implementing a longer block schedule with 2 classes per day, 5 days a week. That model limits students commingling. One Sacramento district has decided if you were one who voted 60% to return, you will be given priority registration, and they will accommodate the remainder with distance learning. The same can be done for staff who are fearful for their safety. We have heard of local districts which have already determined they will return full-time, as distance learning model was unsuccessful with only a 30% participation rate. Are Vacaville students being punished for stepping up and doing their work when you shut us down in the spring? If that is the case, and all it takes is a lack of participation, perhaps that is the next step in getting our students what they need.
Okay, ma'am, I'm sorry, your time is up. Thank you very much.
You must go back to the drawing board, and we expect more from our elected officials.
Kaylin, if I said that right. Did I get it right? Welcome.
Hello, my name is Kaylin Petard. I'm a high-risk student, and I have a heart condition, which sucks. Anyways, but I go to Becca High. I'm going to be a sophomore next year. My brother's going to be a senior next year. Then he's going off to Marine, which sucks for me because I'm going to miss him. It's my opinion that we should return to school full-time. If half the students are there half the week, and half the other students the other half of the week, the teachers and staff are still being exposed to 100% of students. 100%, doesn't matter. So we can't protect teachers and staff from the virus if we're doing the same thing. It's proven not to have a significant impact on our age of kids, high school, middle school. with the proposed semester, with what's trying to be happen, it's going to make it more difficult for kids, especially kids who are already struggling in school, to learn and remember the information taught to us, since they will have to learn the information in half the time. Families should be given a choice to return their students to campus full-time or to have full distance learning. There should be two choices. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Looks like someone that might be related, Amy. Got those same last names going on there.
We do, and we're sitting next to each other.
Yeah.
Hi, my name's Amy Petard. I am a parent in the Vacaville Unified School District. I've got my daughter there that just spoke that's going to be a sophomore, and my son that will be a senior this next year. And I agree with my daughter. I feel like we should be given the option to return our kids to school full time. If the current proposed schedule, the staff, the teachers, they're all being exposed to 100% of the students every week anyways. So let's just bring all the students back. The death rate for students under the age of 18 is absolutely zero in Solano County. The infected rate also is very low. My daughter is high risk. She has a heart condition. She's on the high risk list. I'm comfortable sending her back to school and allowing her to go back mask-free, regular, because mental health is way more important than what's going on currently. We can combat a virus. We can take measures. We can vitamin D, vitamin C, do all the natural things that you should be doing to combat it. And we should be allowed to bring our students back full time.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Blansett.
Hi, board members.
Good evening.
Can you hear me okay through this?
Yep.
Okay. For those of you that don't know, I'm Todd Blansett, the president of the Vacaville Teachers Association. You have a difficult decision to make today, and I don't envy you. I spoke last month about why you should take a cautious, safe approach when opening schools, and I'm here tonight to tell you that VTA endorses the staged reopening plans developed by the committees, and we look forward to working with the administration on all other details of opening safely. There are over 700 teachers, counselors, psychologists, speech therapists, and nurses working for VUHD. Over the past few weeks, many of them have written to you and spoken at the last board meeting about their concerns about safely returning to next school year. They have spouses, children, and parents who care about them, and they deserve a chance to be safe at work. It is possible to open our schools safely this August, and we owe it to our employees to do that. School won't look the same as it did before coronavirus, but nothing does. A trip to Lucky's, to Los Reyes, to Sports Cuts, or anywhere else isn't the same as it was before. And just like everything else, everywhere else, we have to adapt. We owe it to our employees and our students to provide as safe an environment as we reasonably can. The plans that the committees developed will allow that. The plans are a compromise that provides students essential class time and everyone a minimal sense of safety. When we left school in March, it was in a rush and we weren't really prepared to distance teach. Our distance teaching is more developed now than it was before, and we've had time to get the details right before school starts. At the elementary level, the plans provide daily teacher contact for students. They allow physical distancing, childcare options for those who need it. Physical distancing is at least possible with the modified schedules in middle school and high school, and the students have direct contact with teachers on a regular basis, so their learning is supported. We know that the situation isn't ideal for students, parents, or teachers, but as a compromise, it can work. VTA urges the board to adopt the plans developed by the district's committees. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Trish Cardoza? Oh, okay. Sorry. Oh, I saw that back of the room. Is that you? Yeah. Do you have what's? There you go. What's your name?
My name is Casey.
Casey. All right, Casey.
My daughter in the back is going to be starting kindergarten next year. And this is very frustrating to see that if you guys are going to vote for 50-50 reopening, who's going to take care of her? Do you want to babysit for the rest of the day while I work? Because I hold a full-time job. I carry the benefits for my family. It's not 1950. So I need to have full-time school. You're gonna fail her as a student, you're gonna fail all the children. You're gonna have to invest in a lot of mental health of people in order to help compensate for the issues that you guys are gonna cause if you don't go full-time. I saw the survey from online, and first responders don't get time off. We haven't been off. So why should the teachers? All the teachers are all upset about it. So maybe you should consider them first essential workers as well. So that's my.
Okay, thank you very much. And then Teresa, the Miss Cardoza was,
I don't know, I thought you said that she was the graduation.
no, I had took, Trish Cardoza?
Yeah, I was gonna be talking about graduation.
Great, okay, thank you very much.
I'll just go tell Teresa, we have a lot of people trying to get on, so I just rather say it publicly. If we can open a second Zoom, because we're maxed out at 300, and there are people who want to see what's going on. I don't know how and if we can just open a second meeting.
I can open up a link, but then I don't know how it gets.
You'd have
to
so-
the link is what I'm saying. You know what I mean? How would they know where to go?
I have no idea, I don't have the answer to that question.
Yeah,
So probably that's not a meeting without us.
okay.
Facebook, everybody learns everything from Facebook. I don't know.
So,
I don't know if it matters.
Yeah, they can see on Granicus, maybe that's what we need to tell folks, because that's the other option, live stream.
They can watch on Granicus, and if they wanna make a comment, maybe just email us. So we can put a post on Facebook, you can watch the live stream, right?
Yeah, well, it says it on the agenda, but we can put something, if you want us to put something on Facebook saying we can live stream.
That would be a cool option, that would do due diligence.
okay, so my understanding, there's a lot of people that can't get onto Zoom, so what we're gonna do is post a address for you to be able to watch the streaming video. If you're just getting on now and you wanted to speak, I apologize, you're late to the meeting. We had a certain amount of time that was allotted for people to put their name in, but by all means, you can have the opportunity to watch. So,
John,
yes.
I'm sorry, I have the Zoom on here and I'm noticing, the chat is is to say, I want to speak, right? So I know everybody is doing what they did lots of people are doing what they did a couple of weeks ago, which is just making comments. So
So it's open.
Is the chat still open?
But that means you're
I'm
getting
watching
spots
it, it
here.
is.
Why? I thought we decided to close it once we took,
That wasn't my understanding, so we'll just close it now.
it needs to be closed so we don't have that same problem that we had earlier. As long as we have everybody's names that had put in.
Okay.
Thank you.
I have the list now for the Zoom, but you still have one more speaker, right?
I do, but I wanted to say to Mercy and Kaylin and Tria, thank you very much for speaking. That's really hard to do, not saying that you don't have the ability at your age, but especially you to be able to get up here and to voice your opinion and to participate in this process. That's absolutely fantastic. Continue to do that throughout the rest of your life. That would be a great thing. But you guys did a great job. I just wanted to acknowledge that you guys did that. So, and then with that, we'll have Chrissy come speak.
Hi guys, Chrissy. First of all, respect to all of you guys. Second of all, y'all are not good at responding to emails. You might want to get better at that, so just FYI. This is not personal to you, so just heads up, I don't think you're listening to nice. I don't think you're listening to please and can you and whatever, so buckle up your seatbelts and get ready. Corona is in the past. We are almost 200 days out from just do this and just do that. Kids are not even at risk for it. Why are we even in this meeting? Why do I even have to send you an email about something that isn't even a threat to our kids? Now, I understand you probably watch a different news channel than I do, so you probably are on team propaganda, team fear, and I understand that, and you get to do that. That is your personal choice. But listen, people work. People are on IEPs. Online isn't working. We have to do better. Phase 4 Sure, it's okay, but where's 5? I didn't see 5 on a list. So 5 should be go back to school, stop fear propaganda, and stop peddling this corona cult that is going around. Please do your research. Please watch something else besides CNN so that we don't have to come to meetings like this. Our kids are at risk for vaping, addiction, suicide, abuse. Please, let's have that conversation. We shouldn't have to spend tonight coming here talking about going back to school. Okay, if your teachers and your students don't want to go back, this is America. Please do not China my kids' school. Please do not China my America. Okay, so last I checked, we are a free nation and we actually have rights in the Constitution, and maybe we should revisit those things where we have choice. So again, please take a stand for common sense, the Constitution, liberty, and freedom, and for our children that are not only vulnerable, that are abused and dealing with all kinds of things and addiction and special needs, but please, guys, this is beyond ridiculous. Like, let's move forward. Let's open our schools. And if you don't want to go, then don't go. That's all there is to it.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Teresa, do we have the next list? Sweet, thank you. All right. So if we're ready, if we could bring up Austin Preston, please.
Hello and good evening. I am a parent of 2 students as well as a husband of a teacher. And my biggest concern, I understand everybody has their own opinion about the facts and what's going on in this situation. To me, there is no way that you're going to even keep half the people happy. Nobody's going to agree with the decision this evening or whenever the vote is taking place. However, when we're looking at different phases, my big questions are, how are school sites going to sanitize the classrooms in between various groups? If right now they're already short-staffed on the custodial staffing, and we're already looking at budget cuts. So reducing the amount of teachers and custodians that are available on a school site, but also increasing the amount of students in a classroom. If we're looking at a hybrid model of social distancing within a classroom, how can we fit more students in a classroom that is going to require social distancing? It just doesn't seem that there is a viable option for either direction. And I would hope that it's not going to come at the cost of students getting sick or students taking that sickness home and spreading it to others. One of the agenda points in the PowerPoint presentation indicated that reducing the liability of this situation for the school district was one of the key points. And if a student, while they don't show symptoms or an asymptomatic spreader, takes that sickness home to a family member, how is that reducing the liability to the school district? Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Austin. Next, we'll go with Tina Jelinski. We're getting to you here in a second. No, you're all right. There we go. Hello, Tina, are you there?
Yes, hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me now?
Yep, certainly can hear you. Go ahead and welcome.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. So I did have a couple of things to say. I have a 39-year-old and a 36-year-old and a 26-year-old and a 22-year-old that have all graduated from Vac High. And I have continued to be linked with Vacaville schools because I've been doing daycare for 22 years out of my home for 14 kids every day. So I do take them back and forth to school, mostly to Browns Valley and to Markham. However, what our issues were when we were teaching 3 different grade levels, actually 4 different grade levels, along with preschool, March, April, May, and part of June, was that the teachers were all on different pages. Nobody was doing the same thing. Only one teacher out of all the teachers was doing Zoom meetings for an hour. So my biggest thing I'd like to say is it's very important for the board to please look at the fact that there needs to be continuity across the board. All first graders should have the same curriculum every single teacher should be doing a Zoom if they are not having students attend that day. My second thing would be if there's so many different grade levels that childcare is supposed to be helping doing independent study, is there a support that we can give to that? Perhaps a certain liaison at the school district level that we can work personally with to work through these things. I have 7 school-age children besides all my preschoolers this year that I will need at third, second, and first, and kindergartners that I will need help getting all this, you know, put together to make sure we can do a good job with distance learning for them.
Excellent. Thank you, Tina.
Thank you.
Next up will be Kristen Navarro. Kristen, we're getting to you.
Hello?
Hello, Kristen. Can you hear us?
Hello. Hi. Okay,
Hi.
so I'll make it down to 2 minutes. So I just, real quick, with one elementary and with one high school student, I will have kids on completely opposite schedules. I can't see how this will work for any family or teacher with kids in the district. Seems to me that the current proposal will just lead to families withdrawing their students and possibly lead to teacher layoffs, which is counterintuitive. Talking data, California has 6,900 flu deaths for the past season, even with the vaccine. Compare that to the 6,400 COVID deaths this year with 0 natural immunity and no vaccine. Solano averages 81 flu deaths per year compared to our current 25 COVID deaths. It is worth mentioning that the CDC reported last week represented the 10th week of declining deaths due to pneumonia, influenza, and COVID. I think people have lost sight that increasing positive cases without exponentially increasing hospitalizations is a really good thing. It's a highly contagious, highly survivable virus. Vacaville is unique in that we were exposed to the virus much before much of the country. Patient zero had been exposing multitudes of people before ultimately being hospitalized at Vaca Valley. We had cruise ship COVID patients at Kaiser, Vaca Valley, and Travis Air Force Base. School continued for a full month after this without an influx of cases. And even with first responders working tirelessly these past 4 months, Solano has only had 1,740 positive COVID cases out of a population of 447,000 people. If we are not knee-deep in hospitalizations by now, we're not going to be. Teachers absolutely deserve a safe environment, but I'm not sure what about the current data shows any high risk. I am asking that the VUSD board use data, not media hype, not misinformation or politics, as a driving force behind their decision. Please, please be an advocate for our students. Anything less than full-time is detrimental to their social and emotional development. Let's get back to what's best for the greater good. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Kristen. Aisha Faust. We're getting to you. There we go.
All right.
Hello. Can you, certainly can. Go ahead.
Okay, wonderful. I'm a teacher at Markham Elementary, and I just quickly want to talk about the teacher side of this. I want to quickly go back before the pandemic when we were all just regular teachers and not crisis time teachers. A few things that were true for teachers at that time. We were working an average of 50 hours per week, almost 17 hours unpaid more than our contract in this district. We were working full-time jobs with part-time pay, and this has become the expectation for teachers. But teachers are professionals. 56% of public school teachers had at least a master's degree as of 2011, as well as 4 years of bachelor's, credential, induction, hours of professional development, and more. And yet about 1 in 5 teachers have a second job, and some even qualify for food stamps. Speaking of money, let's talk student supplies. A study found that 94% of U.S. teachers spend and feel an expectation to spend their own money on school supplies. $479 average yearly, and 7% even spent more than $1,000. So it's no wonder that 93% of elementary school teachers report a high stress level. And how about the expectation that we protect our kids during an active shooter emergency? We are literally expected to take a bullet for our kids. And then COVID happened, and I don't really need to tell you all the challenges that came with that. So the expectations that teachers are childcare is an absolutely appalling thing to think of, given everything that we already do. I understand that this virus is extremely inconvenient for everyone, but there are other options. Public education is already used as a bandage for some of society's most heartbreaking issues. So most of these are really deeply entrenched systemic issues that you guys can't control, but you do have the power to make a decision about how we re-enter school. With this power, I ask of you one thing. Please do not make us martyrs. We already martyr ourselves every day, putting ourselves last on the list behind everything else. We don't want accolades. We just want someone to do for us, for everyone else. Thank you.
Thank you, Aisha. The next is concerned parent, I guess is the
Versus unconcerned.
unconcerned, yeah.
They're not here.
One last look.
That must be what they tell you.
Not there?
She's got 300 names.
They're in alphabetical order.
Oh.
Maybe type it in as a chart.
Okay, not seeing any. We'll move on. Sorry, concerned parent. Emily Feel, please. If you could bring Emily up, that would be great. Hello, Miss Emily, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I've got you. Go ahead.
All right. First of all, I would like to thank the board and the staff and the committees that have worked so hard to prepare the plan that's been presented. I've been to several meetings to ask you to consider an AM/PM schedule for my kindergarten students. Remember, I'm the teacher from Payton Elementary School. I want to say that the elementary plan presented in the agenda is a good one. It allows maximum student contact time while still allowing safe social distancing. I believe that the smaller class size we'll have under this model is going to allow kids to master the standards faster than they would have if we had 100% on campus. That means that there will be no loss of learning if we go forward with the plan that's presented. So, thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily. Next will be Sandy Wright. Sandy, we're working our way towards you. And hello, Miss Sandy, can you hear us? Sandy? Hello, Sandy? Yeah, I see that. You maybe stepped away. All right, we'll move on. We're looking for David Wellers next, please.
Hi, this is David Weller. Can
Hi,
you hear me?
We got you. Go ahead.
First of all, I just want to say thank you for your efforts in trying to protect the students and the teachers and the families of the district. This is not an easy job. Speaking as a mental health professional, our students need to be in school. They are exhausted from trying to learn on Zoom when that works. Not all families have access to the appropriate levels of electronic devices and internet in the home to be able to do this. And when you have multiple children in the various schools competing for bandwidth and resources to access Zoom, that makes it difficult for families. There are an astonishing lack of pediatric psychiatric services in the area, which makes it difficult for any of the children suffering from isolation and depression to access those resources appropriately. And finally, the children can wear masks in school and still get the resources they need and be able to play the sports and have the outlets that they need to be able to function appropriately and have any type of chance at progressing appropriately with the rest of their peers in the nation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, David. All right, next is Mr. Hobbs, Paul Hobbs. Paul is what I have. Hobbs, Hobbs. Okay. Not there. All right. Is it Mickey next? Mickey Malone.
Good evening. Hi, thank you. However you restart school this year, we have 2 children in the school district who are hearing impaired. Their hearing impairment is not corrected with hearing aids. So when you put the mask on, they lose part of their ability to hear what's being communicated. So that is the first thing. The other thing is that we're not really being offered other alternatives. So we started at Wilsey Wood to talk to the principal about seeing if we could put her in a different schooling situation where we could service her better in a homeschool actual situation. One of them it would be fine because she doesn't do anything, but the other one is a student athlete. And so in order for her to still participate in her athletic program, she has to attend school in the Vacaville district, for lack of a better term. So what we would really like is for you guys to address that issue. Could we be offered other options? Because we feel like we could service her in a different situation, but still for her to be allowed to participate in sports. Thank you.
Thank you, Mickey. Last on the list, Magella. Good evening, Magella. Are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
So I'm a mom of special needs children. And in order for my child's IEP to be implemented, she has social skills. She has goals and social skills. And if she is not in with her peers, how can she work on these goals? And she's a senior, well, she's not even a senior now, but she doesn't have too much longer, and we need this time. Like all our kids that have social needs, anxiety, speech, OT, she's never been taught assistive technology. So Zoom, these classes, she never received any since March. We got packets. She's had no instruction since March. And we're going to hope that our kids come out in the next year or two and have jobs when they've had no education, because the packets aren't working either. I'm not a teacher. I've never claimed to be. It's a really hard job. And this COVID has been really hard on every family. I'm fully aware of that. I mean, nobody saw this coming. So it was a shock. So when you have kids with special needs, though, they need transition. They had no transition. Our whole world's got turned upside down. And we can't give them any kind of little avenue to say, oh, maybe next week or maybe in a month's time, you can go to school or you can receive speech or you can whatever. We had Zoom on speech. Sorry, that was really good. And we've had counseling, which was good. But for the actual instruction, she's had none. Because I'm going to say I'm not a teacher. And to see what she can't do has been heartbreaking. Sorry about my dog. And so I just think for kids with special needs, they really need to consider, especially in the IEP goals, a lot of our kids have social. I'm really sorry about my dog. Stella, stop. Good girl. They need that interaction and they need that instruction. They need that one-on-one instruction. And we have the face shields. If we can't wear the mask, maybe the face shields.
Okay, Miss Magella, I'm sorry, your time's up.
That's fine.
Your dog owes
Thank
you
you.
a few seconds. Okay, thank you very much. And that's all the speakers that we have. So we will move on to action items 6A, reopening of schools discussion. And I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Jane. All yours.
Good evening.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
You want to pull up, Brandon's going to pull up I am going to present at the last board meeting, we talked about the parent survey results, and you asked about a second teacher survey, which we did about 2 weeks ago. And I have the results of that teacher and certificated staff survey, which I will share with you. I just want to send a little appreciation to Brenda Hensley, the Vacaville Teachers Association chairperson for negotiations. She actually saw the board meeting 2 weeks ago Thursday night and saw that you asked for another teacher survey. She spent some time working on it, and I added a couple questions. So I just wanted to show my appreciation to Brenda and Todd for helping us with that.
So before we get going,
Yeah.
just to ask the board to hold your questions until Dr. Jane
Until-
is done and Ed is done,
Yes.
correct? If so,
After
if you
I
could,
present
if you
the
could write
survey
them down.
results, Associate Superintendent Ed Santapadre is going to present on
Perfect.
the rest
So
of the
if we would be
PowerPoint
so
on the
kind, that
results.
would be great.
So it says here we had about 355 responses out of 600 approximately. We actually have, where's Kelly? 661, is that the number? Or
7 or 9 total people, but 676 FTEs.
okay, so it's, as Todd mentioned, we got about 50% response. The 600's wrong. It should be more like 700. So this just tells you who the respondents were. About 80% are just general education teachers, classroom teachers, and 9.3 special ed, and then you see all the smaller numbers that are various other certificated staff. This shows the percentages of grade levels, the total percentage. So kindergarten represents 15% of those that took the survey. If you notice that the percentages don't add up for high school because high school teachers teach more than one grade level, but it's pretty evenly spread. So the first question was, what safety measures do you think are important for reopening schools? The top 3 in the 80% percentages are hand sanitizer, hand washing stations available, and proper airflow. And these are, of course, details we're working on, our maintenance is working on. They're important to us, obviously. The next 3 are sanitizing commonly used surfaces daily, sanitizing commonly used surfaces more than once a day, and face coverings for staff. Those all are around the 70 percentages. Then 66% said face coverings for students, 65 said the physical distancing of 6 feet, and 62.3 keeping students in limited cohorts through the week. And then you could see the lower numbers. 45% said gloves for staff. These were some other comments that were written in. They had the opportunity to write in on the survey. So it said on the survey 0.3%. It's 0.3%, less than 1%. There were probably 1 or 2 comments. Additional staff, airflow, temperature checks, Clorox wipes, and common sense, one of my favorites. So those are the various additional comments that certificated staff added. So if school was to start next week, choose the path that represents the most in-person contact with students that you feel safe with. So as you can see, full school as normal is about 17%, 35.8%, the 50% model. Then the other 2 were 25 and 22, which was the hybrid at 25, and then full distance learning. I put in front of all of you the hard copy of the parent survey that I presented previously, they had similar questions just to compare. I'm looking at slide 4 in the copy I gave you. The question then was, under current levels of COVID in Solano County, which learning environment would you choose? And this was in the parent survey. We had 53.1% say full-time, 11.8% say continue remote learning, 20% chose the 2 days a week with 3 days remote, and 16.8% chose elementary 5 days per week, 8:30 to 12:30, and secondary 4 days. And then 14% said it's too early to determine. The other question, and I'm just sharing these because they're kind of related to this one from the teachers, was if we started school with all students full-time with no social distancing but with precautions in place, what would you choose? 59.7% of the parents said they'd come back to school with all students. 20% said virtual learning, 18% said it's too early to determine, and 7.8% said neither choice is acceptable. And lastly, or actually I'll give you two more that I went over previously. To ensure social distancing at Vacaville Open School with your child attending 2 days per week, what would you choose? And 48% said they would come back to school. 11.2, sorry, I don't have a colored copy. 30.2 said neither choice is acceptable. And 9.8 said it's too early to determine, and then 11% said remote learning. And the last one, in comparison to the slide on the screen, was asking if we opened with elementary at 5 days per week, 8:30 to 12:30, and high school 4 days all day, no social distancing. What would you choose? 53.4 said they would come back under those circumstances. 16% said remote learning, 11 said it's too early to determine, and 18 said I'm not comfortable with either choice. So you have those in front of those compared to these. Next question, how likely would you be to go out on unpaid leave if the option was available? This has come up at times, so we wanted to get an idea of how many teachers were feeling a little nervous about coming back and would go on unpaid leave. So very likely was only 2%, and then the next level up from that was 3.7, but not likely, 75%. Under what circumstances would you consider taking a year of unpaid leave? So 75% said they cannot do it. Almost 20%, 19.8% said if they came back full-time, they might consider, and then you can see the other numbers for the other models there. And then this, we do want to know, and we're continuing to work on this, to find individual teachers that are interested in the full distance model for the parents that choose it. And that was the question, was, would you be interested in teaching full distance learning? And we had 18.3 very likely, then an additional 12.1%, the next level of likely, with a total of 30%. So this does tell us that we have a number of teachers that might want to or are interested in distance learning. I want to share a couple other things before I ask Mr. Santapadre to come up here. First of all, you saw all the comments. I sent 32 pages of comments from teachers to all of you. And a lot of them were questions about what are we going to do? They mentioned HVAC, airflow, sanitizing. What's the protocol when a teacher or student gets sick? What's a cleaning schedule? What about substitutes and the type of remote learning and Fridays off versus Wednesday and what they're going to do about their personal childcare? A lot of the details that people are asking questions about, we're working on them. We needed first to decide what model we're going to adopt as a district and then work on the details. We have maintenance here that could speak to any question because he's working on a staggered plan for custodians and sanitizing. And we don't have a shortage of custodians. We are able to do that, and Dan is working on a plan for that. I also wanted to share with you real quick some information about districts. You know, we talk to each other, we read articles, so I've been collecting information over the past couple days of the districts, the different districts and what model. Now, a lot of districts haven't decided, but in Solano County, Travis most likely will start at 50%. Fairfield is still planning on 100% unless something changes. Benicia is likely going to start at 50% with the elementary model AM PM. And Vallejo was considering 100%, but they haven't made a decision. And as you might know, their superintendent went to work somewhere else, so I don't know what's going on there. Dixon is going to the board on July 16th, and they're probably going to look at a hybrid type model as well. I also looked into some Sacramento area districts. Elk Grove, Folsom, Cordova, Twin Rivers are all doing the 50% model. Buckeye School District in Sacramento County is an elementary school district. They are returning full-time with a distance learning option. San Juan, Unified, Sac City have not made a decision yet. And Natomas is working on 3 models, traditional, independent study, hybrid. And but they said they're still trying to develop this and hasn't been negotiated yet with their bargaining unit. In Yolo County, Davis has not decided. They are going between distance learning and talking about a hybrid model, but struggling like all of us with the decision. Washington School District working on multiple blended learning models. Woodland considering 50% for elementary, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and secondary full virtual academy. And I had a couple from Contra Costa. Mount Diablo has decided on the 50% model. And Brentwood School District and Oakley out in East Contra Costa have both decided to do full distance learning. Liberty High School District, 50%, and Antioch considering a hybrid. I was a little surprised at the number of districts that haven't made a decision yet, are still struggling, which is completely understandable. So we're bringing to you, it's similar to then the original 50% we brought to you. We've made some changes to the elementary for the AM/PM daily, and Mr. Santapadre is going to talk about that, and also talk about what they call the quasi-master model for high school that we're proposing.
Is there a clicker?
Good timing.
Is there a clicker?
Oh, click.
Good evening, President Jansen, board members, Superintendent Shamia. I decided tonight to try the shield. We took a little criticism last time for coming up here and speaking without keeping our masks on, and so I thought I would try this, and I tried it the other day, and it's pretty comfortable. Feels like I have a hat on, so I'm sure it looks wonderful as well. I saw that look. Yeah, that's fair. I can live with that. So I'm going to present a plan tonight for your consideration. I do want to spend a minute and talk about the information that we've been gathering. There's been a large committee that has worked on this, of teachers, of administrators, of district office people, classified personnel. I would like to thank that committee for putting in, and then there were subcommittees that went off of that. The VTA leadership, Todd and Brenda, have been super to work with as we work through these things. We've looked at all the surveys, all of the comments from parents, from teachers, from classified staff, lots of emails, lots of feedback. The board workshop was super helpful. We had the attorney here giving us information, we had the doctor here, and then all of your feedback over the last few meetings we've been listening to and trying to work it into a plan that can be flexible. The plan has changed over time, and it is not the same one we thought when we started. So I'll get into the plan in just a second, but if you could give me 1 minute, just not to talk from the team standpoint, but this is from my standpoint, just me personally. I have to tell you, from the moment we started thinking about closing school in March through the distance learning, through graduation, and now through the reopening plan, this is the most difficult thing I've ever worked on in my career. I've been doing this a while. There's a lot of reasons for that. One, as you hear tonight, there are no great answers, right? We're not hiding the great answer for some other time. There are just no great answers to this, and we're just gonna do our best to make it work for kids. There are many differing opinions, and they're all valid, and everybody's right, and so that makes it tricky. There's not only no clear guidance, but there's often conflicting guidance, and it sometimes changes midstream, and so that makes it difficult. And for me, most importantly, there's no bag of experience that we can reach into and pull out of. When we have budget crisis, we go and say, hey, what did we do in 08 and 09, and what worked and what didn't? There's no bag here, and so no board policy, no thing to go back on. We just are using our instincts. We're listening to people, and we're trying to do the best we can. And this really goes against our nature. By nature, we want to include people. We want to have bigger. We want to have more. We want to have everybody. And so this is really hard on us personally. So I just ask for a little patience with us as we do this, and a little grace, and we will try and keep the plan as flexible as we can. And that's what we've created for you tonight, is a plan that we think can move up and down as we need to move. And I'll go through it now. So as we listen to different things, there's both sides of this ledger. And certainly safety is important. We want our staff, students, and community to be safe. And, you know, the lawyer talked about the liability meter, and that was very interesting for me to hear. And that's awesome. We need to be safe about those things. But we also have an awesome responsibility to teach our kids. And we know that. And so that really is on the other side of that. And again, we know the economy doesn't really open if we're not helping with that last part so people can go to work, and we heard some of that tonight. So this is the balancing act we're trying to work on, and it's not easy. So I'll go through the plans. You've seen most of these, so I'm going to really not just go over it and over and over it again. You know most of it. I'll tell you the changes, and I'm going to really stay on stage 3 because, again, that's where we're suggesting at this moment to open, and that is 50% of the students at one time. And so that's the one, but you can see we can go back and forth from 2 to 4 and do all that. So elementary did change over the course of this discussion, and we think for the students learning, a hybrid model of a morning and afternoon group will be important, and having 8:30 to 11-ish, you know, with the various start times of schools, and an afternoon session 4 days a week for students, and we'll talk about why, and you can see 2 and 4 or more or less. And this allows for the distancing because only half the students are on campus at any one time. Now, I'm going to just say a general statement about special education. We have these slides following each, and then if there are specific questions, Sasha Begel will be happy to help me answer them. But really, special ed will start and get at least the same amount of time as general ed. And then in most cases, in many cases, because of the smaller size of the classes, they can maybe move forward faster. So when we say at a high school level 2 days, they may be able to get 4 days. And so just know they will get at least as much as general ed. And again, depending on the size of the class and the classroom and the setup, we're hoping to even do more, right? Okay. So this is the special ed elementary. And again, you see in stage 2, they still are getting 4 days a week when maybe other students are only getting 2. So really the elementary summary is to have 50% of the students in class at any one time so we can keep the distance. TK through 6 is on the same schedule. We had talked about maybe TK3 being on one and 4 through 6 being on another. Again, we've heard that we know that the educational foundation building requires more face-to-face. So the elementary students who are learning skills need more face-to-face maybe than a high school student who are learning content. And last, again, we're going to talk more about the childcare in a bit, but this is at least more days and doesn't solve that, but it's part of it. So now we're going to go to high school. And that is the plan where they go 2 days a week to 3 classes for a 90-minute block period in each. And really that's the quasi-mester we talked about, and really it's a college model. And the quasi-mester is a 9-week quarter where they take 3 classes. They get to focus on 3 classes, because one of the things we heard in distance learning, and we've learned a lot in distance learning, by the way, one of the things we heard is that it's really tough to manage six things at a time. And so we're saying this gets more time in front of the teacher with 3 full hours for each class per week, and then distance learning the rest of the time. And then at the quarter, they switch to the other 3 classes. Now, the downside of this one was we were going to have to stick with it into the semester, and if something happened where we went really down in cases, we now have a way to sort of bring them all back if that comes up. So that was a positive that we came up with it. Again, with the high school, the special ed, as you see, it's 4 days of classes for the smaller classes, so those students can get more support, because we do know and we agree that the distance learning is trickier. And here's what a high school schedule might look like, and we just broke it up by alphabet. with the students doing the first, third, fifth period on Monday and Tuesday, and then the same thing on Thursday and Friday for the other group. And again, what we have is everybody's taking their first, third, and fifth period. So if things go to stage 4, then we can bring them all together and they can all be there for 4 days a week. So, so that was one of the changes we made that we think is positive. And again, for the high school plan, really it's only 50% of the students at one time are in a class, so that can keep them distant. They're not having their second, fourth, sixth period students at the same time that they are their first, third, and fifth. It is a college academic model where you go a couple days a week, you learn some things, you go work on your own, you work with the teacher, and what I focus on is at the end of this semester, after they've done all the first 9 weeks and then the second 9 weeks, is that they have a transcript that still is whole, and they have all 6 of their classes that they would have had if this not had occurred. And you know, I am always worrying about the high school transcript, and I think this is a way to keep that whole. And then middle school, really the plan looks a lot like the high school plan, but you heard at the last meeting that there was really some concern from the middle school staff, and rightfully so, that maybe they didn't really get a chance to be as involved in this as we would have liked. So we did that. Ryan Gallus, one of our directors, pulled together a group, and there were 26 people, teachers, administrators, and they had a couple of really long Zoom calls to work through the middle school special issues, the things that are really specific to middle school. And they've worked through it, and they did a great job, and they ultimately came up with the plan that looks a lot like the high school plan, but it was great to get 26 thumbs up at the end of that, and some nice emails after to say that they were pleased that they got to talk about it and be involved in it. So again, theirs will look very much like the high school. Again, middle school, same thing, a little bit more when we can. And the schedule looks very similar. And the results look very similar. Again, for a student to not have to manage 6 classes is important. So we're going to talk about daycare. Oh, no, we're not. I forgot. We're going to talk about the Vacaville Virtual Learning Academy. So for the people who choose to be not in the school at all, who want to go full-time distance learning, we have a plan for that. And it's the Vacaville Learning Academy, and it is, again, significant. We've learned a lot from distance learning. We've learned a lot from our traditional independent study, and this is going to be a really nice option for students. They're going to have a virtual classroom, so they're going to be part of a community group. There's going to be video lessons, virtual field trips. They're going to meet with the teacher regularly through technology, and we're excited about it, and we're excited about the teachers who want to do it, and we think this is a great thing for our students. Again, and we're starting to figure out which of the platforms work, so we don't have 14 different ones, and some of the things we heard about, let's start figuring out, and so everybody's doing the same things. That's all part of how we're designing this. And so what we'll do after the board decides on a plan, because we've heard from people, depending on what the plan is, will depend on who wants to do this. And we're not going to send out a survey about virtual learning. We're going to send out an enrollment packet. And we're just going to let people know, if you want to do this, sign up. And then we'll know how many students we have who want to do this. And this is K through 6. Okay, so this is K through 6. So we'll see how many want to sign up, and then we'll know how many teachers we need to assign to that. For 7 through 12, we already have that option with Kimmy. And to answer maybe one of the questions I heard on the thing about athletics, if the student goes to Kimmy, they can still participate in athletics through their home school. And if they are not in our district, then because of section rules, they cannot. So that sort of answers that. But so we'll start working with HR once we get this, and then we don't want this to be a short-term independent study option, because this is a lot of work and we don't want people in and out, but we're not asking for a year commitment. We're saying if you can hang in there for a quarter, see if it's working for you. And then if things change or if you decide you want to jump back in or jump back out, we can do that. Okay. So, childcare. I'm going to have our director, Romero Barone, come up in just a second to talk about it. But I do want to say this. I'm really, as always, proud to be part of Vacaville because this community is amazing. And when we have issues, this community always steps up for our students. And I think this is just a great example of seeing how quickly and how easily our community partners step up. So, you know, I think we can pull some things off in Vacaville that maybe some other communities can't. So, Mr. Barone will talk to you about childcare and after-school activities.
Thank you, Mr. Sanapadre. Good evening, board, Superintendent Shamia. So our committee was really in charge of putting together the different resources and options within our community that can support our families and primarily our students with childcare needs. And so I want to start by commending the people that work with me, my committee members. But primarily, I also want to thank the 4 entities that I'm going to be sharing with you and what they provide for the support and just, you know, being open-minded. And like Mr. Sanapadre said, really working about what's best for our community. They really stepped up. Mrs. Eden, Anna Eden is here actually with us today. So thank you, Anna, representing Boys and Girls Club. So we met, we talked, and we developed sort of some options for our community. The first one was the City of Vacaville through the TGIF program. They serve students between kindergarten and 6th grade. They have 5 locations where they serve students. Their hours are from 6:15 a.m. to 6 p.m. And they have a capacity anywhere from 30 to 50 students per site. So anywhere from 150 to 200 students to be able to serve. There is a cost for that. There's an annual fee as well as a monthly fee that is accrued into the equation. However, there are opportunities for waivers, scholarships that are available for families. The second one is the Levin Project. The Levin Project serves TK to 6th graders. They are located at 4 centers, all within reach of some of our elementary schools. They offer after-school tutoring from 90 to 120 minutes per day. They are open on school days, and they serve anywhere from 25 to 30 kids per center, and the cost is free for that service. We have Vacaville's Imagine That, who's one of the new players that came across. I'm very thankful that they wanted to be part of this process. They are thinking that they can serve kindergartens to 6th grade students. They can serve students, approximately up to 44 of them. They're located at the Alamo Plaza, and their hours are pretty flexible. They have a lot of support, and they're willing to work with students right after school all the way to 6 p.m. There is a cost of $12 per day, but again, parents can qualify for waivers and scholarships. And then last but not least, our Vacaville Boys and Girls Club, through the ACES program, which is located at 4 of our elementary sites. They also run a program at Jefferson and Vacapena, and they have 2 centers on top of that. A total of 350 students usually have the resource of daycare, and they are available after school until 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. There is a cost for the Boys and Girls Club. However, for ACES, it has been a free service for all students who are attending those 4 sites. So with all that, there's still needs, and obviously we have to address those. First one is transportation. How do we transport students to programs and from programs? So that is something that we're going to be working within our district and also seeing what other options outside of our district are there for our students to have that safety component. Facility usage. We know that if we are going to keep our ratios to a minimum, we have to expand our facilities. That means that possibly more classrooms being available at the school sites after school for students to be able to minimize the student to staff ratio as a result of that. Funding. How do we support some of that, especially with the circumstances with some of our families? So, we'll have to put our heads together and try to come up with some ways to fund that. And again, staffing, where do we find, adults, maybe former students who are willing to partake in the process of providing some of that service? We are thinking that because some colleges might be going online, there might be an opportunity to have more students in our town who will be available to maybe support us with that, and obviously get compensated in the process. Next steps, we're meeting tomorrow. We are desperate to find out what the direction is so that we can start putting really all of our eggs in the basket and start working on a plan that can help support our community. We also want to create a brochure and a pamphlet that's going to be shared out through different means, Facebook, the website, for our families to know where they can tap into these resources. And then obviously communicate with community on how to go ahead and register for these programs as we go through this process. Thank you.
So that is the plan we're putting forth for your consideration tonight. All of Cabinet, and I repeat that, it's not just me, all of Cabinet is here to answer whatever questions you might have from us or facilitate the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, board members, questions? Okay. Mr. Wyndham.
Okay. First of all, I just want to say thank you for putting this together, because I know that it's been mentioned earlier tonight that there is no win in this for anybody. I mean, there's always going to be somebody who is, who's not getting what they believe is the right direction. So I do appreciate everything put together, but I do have some questions about it. And some of these I realize that you may not be able to answer because they may not have answers, but I think it's just important for consideration. Let me just start with this. Is it fair to say, I mean, we're talking about reduced instruction time, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we're talking about a hybrid model, but there's going to be less instruction time than students would have gotten in a 5-day week, correct?
Less direct, yes.
Okay. Do we have any idea? I mean, based on, and again, I realize this is one of those questions. There's going to be no data that you can go to, but do we have any idea of, I mean, what impact is that going to have? Because we look at the data, right? And well, let me back up. When we talk to the experts, at least I think it was, I'll say Dr. M because I always get his name wrong, the county public health doctor. And he mentioned that, a year to 2 years is very possible of this thing going forward. So whatever we do, we potentially may have to do this for a couple of years, right? So what impact do you think that's going to have on that reduced learning time on students?
So I can't quantify it, but here's what I would say. What our job is, whatever the plan we agree to, we have to maximize that time. So when we think about our teachers in front of our students, our elementary teachers, our secondary teachers just have to find ways to maximize that time and then build on that for the distance learning part to minimize that. Because when we looked at our things we were worried about, educating the child and not having those is a big one. So our teams are working on that, and so I can't quantify that, of course.
So if, let's just say, hypothetically speaking, which I think is a reasonable assumption, that we have to do this for a year, for this entire school year. I mean, I think there's a lot of experts that say that's very likely, right? If we go into whatever model we choose, it's going to be something less than stage 4. So let's say we have stage 3 for a year. After that point, I mean, how do we start to rebuild educationally? Because we talked a lot about, over the years, we always hear a lot about the achievement gap, and that focuses on certain students. But now I think we're looking at potentially an educational gap that's going to be across an entire generation of students that have received reduction in education through no fault of their own and no fault of staff's. If this goes on for a year, I mean, what kind of things do we look at? And again, it might be a question you can't answer, but I'm just trying to think of if it increases. It seems to me that if a year of this type of plan, we're building on the learning loss, and I'm just thinking a year down the line, then what? I mean, where are we at?
So again, I don't have a crystal ball. When students come back this fall, we need to see what were some of the impacts of what happened last spring. And I know at all of the levels they're working on intervention in different ways to support the relearning or learning of things that they didn't get. And we will continue that through the whole year. Again, I didn't plug into this plan the intervention, the ELD services, a lot of the other pieces that students will get. But you're right, it'll be more students, and so I don't know specifically how much or how we fix it.
I appreciate it. And then again, some of these questions, I know that you don't have an answer, but I think that they're worth asking because if nothing else, we need to think about them.
I am prepared to say I don't know a lot tonight, because much of this is going to be I don't know.
It goes
We're
with the
gonna
mask,
figure it out.
actually. So, there's a couple emails we got from students talking about, concerns around AP classes, because that's something that students are becoming increasingly, more involved in and becoming more college ready. So, have we looked at, or do we know what impact, if you have a student, for example, that has multiple AP classes with this reduced schedule, how does that fare for the student that maybe that doesn't come as easy to, but they're still working to become college ready with those?
Right. Yeah, that's hard. And I think the good news is they're only going to take 3 at a time, and so they're not going to have to manage that alone. And then in the plan, there are some nuances where we're going to have some ability to add to the instruction, and I could see AP being a lot of different classes where they might extend the learning, so they have sort of the Monday, Tuesday group and the Thursday, Friday group, and maybe do ways to do some video and some other things to add to that learning. I think a lot about the AP students as all of them, and I think with the 3 classes and with their ability and they're working with their teachers, again, because the teachers will still be supporting them on the days they're not there, and
then,
in fact, we're going to get our AP results next week on the 15th, and so
that'll be interesting.
We'll have some more information for you as to what happened, and the test was different. Everything was different about it, just like everything else.
Right. So speaking specifically to the elementary plan, because I've had a lot of parents that have raised concerns, and I can understand. So you have kind of an AM PM schedule, right? If they're going to be in person, and that's 4 days a week, right?
Yes.
So what's the logic, and understand, I'm not advocating for one or the other at this point yet, but what is the logic of reducing the number of hours over 4 days as opposed to 2 full days? Because here's my concern. Now you have childcare issues spread over 4 days and pick up and drop off and a lot of things that can really complicate that. So what's the...
I think that one really, because we were at the 2 days at one point, I think that one really came down to the elementary teachers feeling like for the skills they are building, to see them every day and to have a good solid amount of time. Now there might not be a lot of extra stuff. They're not going to be doing PE there or some other things, but for the reading, which is always our biggest concern, especially the early elementary, reading and math, they're going to have time virtually every day with their teachers to work on that, and which would support them. So I think they felt, as opposed to high school where again it's more content, elementary it's more skills and skill acquisition, and they felt like they really needed that time with the students more.
Okay, so they needed more days. The 2 days wasn't going to be sufficient.
The 2 days felt, when you're, just with some of the routines they're trying to teach kids. I always watch the first day of school, and I was a high school person, so when I'd go, and first day of school, they all lined up really well and started walking. It was stopping that was really tricky because there's a lot of that. And so, and then you don't come back for 3 days. Whereas this way, I think there's just more routines they can get.
So I just have a question. Have you looked at, or did you guys, as you're working on a plan, look at the document that was recently produced by the American Academy of Pediatrics?
I glanced through it. I didn't look through it.
Because I'm just, it's interesting because they really take a look at the balance between some of the things we've heard tonight about the social emotional impacts and mental health impacts and the learning loss, and I think they even kind of address the achievement gap in special education students. So I guess I want to be clear with kind of going back to the elementary model. So this would be one teacher would have 50% of the students in the AM schedule, and then they would have the same teacher would have the other half in the PM schedule.
Uh-huh.
So it'd be the same teacher, same classroom, different students.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll come back to that in a few minutes. the partnerships with the other community.
Just wondering where my team was. No.
Okay. They're backing up. I don't know why.
They're right behind.
It's either your mask or me. I don't know. Maybe it's both. I don't know.
Go ahead.
So the plan, and I think that Ramiro mentioned with some of the community resources, which are fantastic, but those cumulatively are a little bit less than 500, right, as far as the number of students at maximum that they could accommodate. So beyond that, I mean, as far as, and I understand, I've heard some teachers say, and I agree with that school district is not, I mean, we're not in the childcare or daycare business, but at the same time, lives and careers are predicated on certain school days and hours that have traditionally been in place for, since all of us have been going to school and have had kids. So, I mean, do we think there's other options out there? Because I can see that being a real barrier for parents being able to bring their students to school. And I think we've also heard from parents that there's a lot of students, and especially at the elementary age, that I would think distance learning would be quite a challenge. I don't think my kids would have been successful at that, and I don't think I could have really supported them as well. Because I'm not a teacher, and I don't claim to be. So, I mean, what are our thoughts around those, other than the 500? I mean,
So I know Ramiro and his team are looking for more partnerships, more ways. The one nice lady who I know, by the way, who has kids and is willing, the answer is yes, we'll work with her. We'll help get her curriculum when she has a group over, So again, this is going to be a community thing. And as I said earlier, we understand that the community or the economy doesn't get roaring until we're back full time. We get that. I mean, so how many slots we come up with, if we come up with 1,000, I don't know how many we need. We did ask that on one of the surveys, and it's I think that's an all hands on deck. I know my wife has been asked about, as a grandparent, picking up a few minutes with the kids. So yeah, that's awful and hard.
Okay. I've got a lot of questions, so I'm going to ask one more, and then I'm going to pass it and I'll come back here because I don't want to monopolize. But just, I guess the other question I have, and this is, I don't know how much you guys can consider this, but I'm just wondering if this was something that was discussed. So I'm thinking about, again, focusing on elementary specifically. So now you have an AM schedule and a PM. So if I'm a working parent, and a lot of folks here, I mean, if there's two parents in the home, they're probably both working because, I mean, you can barely afford a house with two parents working in this community, right? So in most places. So that being said, there's probably going to be an increased need for childcare, and whether that's grandma and grandpa, whether that's So is there any discussion of, even though you have AM and PM and reduced numbers of kids in the class, that gives them more time outside of the class to not only interact with their peers, which they are doing, but also they're in a childcare or daycare environment, which now is a whole different group that they're, as opposed to being in the same static classroom. So it seems to me there's almost more potential for disease spread and for infection that way. I mean, is that something you guys looked at or talked about?
Yeah, of course. And I don't know the answer to that. I think, yeah, I'm getting more comfortable with I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
But I will say that we believe having 32 children sitting in a closed classroom together at any level for 90 minutes at the high school or 2.5 hours at elementary is the concern. That's the main concern with the 50% model. That's the main benefit to the 50% model. You only have 50% of the students in the class at any one time, so they can sit at desks that are a bit apart, and when the second group comes in, they can sit at the other desks if we haven't gotten them wiped down. So that's the main benefit. Where people go after that, and again, I've seen some daycare and that also have to do some things and trying to manage this. So I don't know which is worse. From our standpoint, the 4-day a week with the elementary students seemed better academically, and to not have 32 students in a classroom at one time was what this plan was built on. That's the 50%.
And I think the doctor addressed it a little bit, but I guess I just keep coming back to my concern is that cohort models versus multiple contacts throughout the community. It seems to be that if I understood the doctor correctly, that it's really more of those contacts in the family, occasionally in the community. It's not, there hasn't been any cases in schools that I know of, at least in the local area. So, I mean, from a medical standpoint, is that something we have or we can take a look at? Because that concerns me. I just feel like there's more interaction potentially with a half day than there would be with kids in a school. So I don't, but.
Yeah, I'm really sure I won't give medical advice.
Thank you.
Oh,
You got back.
my medical advice. There we go.
No, you look like you should be.
And your mask is much better, by the way, than
Thank
his. His
you.
freaks me out. I just,
I'm
he
going
needs
to
a
get
chainsaw.
Edwin's
I
just
like
on
it.
back order. So I think that the piece that, to me, we can't control what kids do out of school. We never have been able to control what students and families choose to do outside of the school setting. But being able to provide the social distancing, physical distancing in the classroom when they come back is what we can control. And so I think that that's all the more reason to do a 50% model, is because if the kids are going to be kids and do what they're going to do and hang out with different cohorts and different groups of children outside of our care, then to me that means we have all the more responsibility to make sure that when they're in our care, we're at least providing that opportunity to physically distance, both for the students in the class as well as the staff. So I think that's, part of the piece that we struggle with. But I would say on the cohorting piece, we can control what we can control in the schools. And I know at one of our reopening school session, there was a conversation about that kids are going to play baseball and soccer and, go to their friend's house, and we can't control that. But what we can control is that school setting. And so by ensuring that they are at least physically distancing when they're with us, we can hopefully mitigate some of that spread that they may be bringing with them from their outside activities.
Okay, thank you. I'll pass it for now.
So if I could just add on the social distancing aspect on childcare, we had a conversation with our committee regarding the importance of being able to do a lot of outdoor activities from the perspective of, we know that transmission is less likely being outdoors. So that is looking at ways that we can incorporate and reduce the transmission process based on what the research says.
Okay, Ms. Tracy.
So I have a lot of questions and a lot of info, and I'll try to be succinct. So I guess just to piggyback from where Sean left off, so I really wanted to make sure that I spoke from a place of accuracy that can be, so anybody can call Dr. Matias at the county, confirm what I'm saying, you can look it up, there you go. So I just think it's really important for everyone to understand that 182 kids under the age of 18 in this county have gotten COVID since it started, right? No one's died. We only have, right now, there's I don't know, 35 people in the hospital, countywide. To everyone's point about positivity rate going up, and I think someone said it on the call, the CDC, the Lancet, the American Association of Pediatricians, children who do get it are getting mild cases. There are exceptions to every rule, so yes, it's a general statement, but the bell curve is still real. And they're not actually, all of the tracing data, people can look it up, is not necessarily implying that kids are always giving it to their families and or parents and or even their peers or vice versa. So I wanted to make sure that I understood clearly, so I spoke to Dr. Matias. I begged him to jump on our call, so we might get lucky, but I wanted to understand this. Everybody's really concerned about asymptomatic spread. So to the point of what Sasha said about we can't control what kids do after school. So I feel like we have the responsibility of looking at the big picture. So people were talking about HVAC and spread. So as a teacher, if I was a teacher, and I understood from what everyone has said is that it's droplet transmitted, right? So far, no, I mean, the science is clear. It's, right? Well, I mean, I guess everyone has science to prove their point, which proves the point that clearly we shouldn't necessarily make the decision on one side or the other completely. So, but if you look at the CDC, if you look at the WHO, if you look at the, organizations that people trust, it will tell you that the main transmission is droplet. So if you're asymptomatic and you're not coughing, sneezing, picking your nose and shaking someone's hand, sharing a drink, eating off your teacher, right? There should actually be almost no way if the teacher's wearing a mask and there's a shield and or 6 feet of distance, because distance is more important than masks, right, for protection, to even contract the virus, right? So I just want to throw that out there because that goes to this idea of if the cohorts are leaving school, we can do everything we want in school, but when school starts, we have no idea which teachers and which students are going to show up positive. So 2 weeks after school starts, we may be seeing cases because who knows who's going to show up asymptomatic, not knowing they even have it, because we have no intention of doing testing up front. It would be expensive, it'd be ridiculous. So there's a level of risk we're all taking, and I feel like maybe we missed. So HVAC. If we spend a lot of money on HVAC and we're concerned about somehow it getting so airborne that it skips the 6 feet and it hits I mean, we can't, it's a pretty, right? I mean, it's a magic bullet. So I'm just concerned that we're gonna solve the wrong problems, and I'm thinking, and maybe the ship has already sailed, but one of the things that the doctor said to me today was, have you guys decided collectively as a school board, as a school system, and as a community partnership, which problem we're trying to solve? So if we agree collectively, I don't know what the answer is, but that children are overwhelmingly safe, how are we going to keep our teachers safe because of the population, then maybe we solve a different problem. So I don't know that we're all having the conversation from the same lens, right? And maybe, so I'm struggling with, I don't want to get upset, really wanting to honor local authority, owning it, not having to have somebody else make a decision for us, respecting our teachers, respecting our parents, but more than that, respecting our kids, because we can't undo some of the decisions we're going to make. So as much as I agree with, so I don't know, I guess, Dan, can you talk to, like when we talk about HVAC and cleaning, the other part of this is, you know, fomite transmission is like negligible, which is surface transmission, right? So we talk about deep cleaning, but if it's negligible risk because we're not necessarily cleaning up snot and bodily fluids and droplets all the time, then do we need the empty day of classes to deep clean, or is there other ways to do that? Can students be a part of cleaning with Clorox? All this science matters in how we build our plan. That's, sorry.
No, students can't use Clorox.
Well, they use
can't. I mean,
thieves.
Our teachers can't even do it unless they go through a training online. So, yeah. But
you know what I mean.
But
Vinegar?
it depends on what decision is made, is how we do this. And typically for cleaning, if there was some kind of A and B during the day, typically our custodians, we have one that comes in early in the morning and is there during the day. The other ones come in the afternoon. It's going to be a matter of shifting, moving their shifts, coming in early to help clean the sites between the A and B, if that's what is chosen. And then we'll have to, and we've even talked about, we're going to have to add some custodians to cover some night functions as well, to do some of the other cleaning. And at the secondary schools, it's gonna be about shifting. That Wednesday, we would spend Mondays and Tuesdays spending a lot of time on disinfecting, where Wednesday would be catching up on things we might not have gotten to on Monday and Tuesday. And it helps us catch up on some of the things. That's what that Wednesday would be about. But it just depends on what schedule I have. I'm working on spreadsheets for all the different sites where I think we would need to add custodians to help. And what we don't, it's just a matter of moving around their schedules.
So what's the language about airflow and stuff? Are we not even touching that?
That's going to be our systems we're not hospitals. We don't have separate ventilation in the rooms. It's all part of the system itself. Can we change the airflow? Yes, we can. Some easier than others. Some of the newer systems that are online that we have control over. We can change the amount of air that's coming from the inside and outside a little bit, but those are not designed to be able to stop ventilation completely or do nothing but ventilation, because there's no, there is ventilation in it, but it's air conditioning or heating.
Okay.
It's I don't have that kind of control. These are not made that way.
So what is the threshold for students to be involved in sanitation? So like we use germ gel, so they can use alcohol, right? So can they wipe down desks with alcohol?
That's not my decision to make, but any type of chemical that you use, whether it's an adult, I've never even considered kids cleaning classrooms, but
of course,
you still have to be trained. I mean, well, that's what you're saying, so I don't understand what you're saying.
I'm not saying
okay.
that. I'm saying if we can put germ gel in a kid's hand
Yeah.
then in theory, they could use a Purell wipe to wipe down their desk when they leave the classroom as a part of the process. I'm just saying, we need to be innovative on how we can solve, if we're agreeing on what problem we're solving.
Sure, sure. But you know, that there's laws and things that that we'd have to make sure we're not breaking in order to be creative or
That's
innovative.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And I guess I just want to say that if you haven't watched it today, the president did host a community conversation around opening schools, and he was really clear that not only is he going to put pressure on all of the governors to open schools, but that the CDC recommendations, all of the Department of Education recommendations, nationally and statewide, that they're not supposed to supplement the local needs of getting kids in school, and they're not supposed to supplement the local recommendations from public health officers. So we do have some jurisdiction to make decisions around safety for our community. And so the reason I brought up the data before was because if we're solving the problem for Solano County and for Vacaville specifically, we don't have to answer some of those questions. We just have to watch the data and then be nimble and flexible, right? And I thought I was on board with everything until I really am understanding. I think what's missing maybe from the plan is a time frame, or so, because I was, whatever marker we're going to use, because I do believe we have to compromise. So I'm probably going to, I'm fully prepared to piss a whole bunch of people off. But if we compromise out of respect for as many people as possible, to solve as many problems as possible, I feel like we should have a very clear expectation for ourselves of when we can move. And agree if that's the state or if it's some other marker. And so I probably will have more questions, but I feel like, so the biggest, AM, PM.
Yes.
How do people sign up for that? So if we're gonna really, if we did this AM, PM model for elementary school and parents work, and they can manage if their kid is an AM, the afternoon pickup, or I'm a stay-at-home mom, and so I'm flexible, I can do mornings, so right? Or I can do afternoon if somebody else needed. How do we have a plan for that?
So I think each principal will work on that, and that is the nuances in a master schedule. I know that, as I'd set up a master schedule for 2,000 kids, we'd have to think about who needed sixth period PE, or there's a work experience. So I think this goes to that. I think the goal is to get them as balanced as we can, the AM and the PM. We don't want 24 in the AM and 8 in the PM, but the principals are just great at working with parents, with families on who can do which, how can we make this work. And I don't think we could do that from our level. I think that's principal by principal, as they do all the time, sort of manage that.
So it's really important for the community to hear that there is some customization at school sites with your teacher and your staff and your team. I'll probably have more later, but.
Okay, if we could bring up Ms. Dowley, please, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Hello,
I just
Shelley.
have a couple of things. I've asked a lot of questions prior to the meeting. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
This is a huge, difficult decision that I know we've all been stressed about. I've been reading every day. And first of all, to Sean, I really appreciate Sasha's comments about what we can and can't control. And also, if the kids aren't in school for 3 days and they have to go to daycare for those 3 days, then they're still as exposed as they would be at half days in the afternoon or morning. So to me, if they're not in there, if we're not doing full time, which I at this point don't support, but if they're still going to be exposed. And my hope is that parents who feel that their children are ready for full time, that they are getting together with their friends, because those parents feel that that's an important piece to them. So if those kids are getting together with their friends because those parents made that choice, then I think we owe it to the parents who are not having their children get together with them and keeping them in a hunkered down bubble, and who are sending their children back with the 50%, to respect the fact that that social distancing is going to help keep their child safe as well as the teacher. So I do believe kids can get social interactions, and it may be through the home and through other ways that the family is providing, and maybe not being in school 100% of the time. The other thing is education. As you know, I was an educator for many years and a principal, and I truly believe that when teachers have less children in a classroom, whether it's 16 teenagers out of a class of 32, or whether it's 12 third graders out of a class of 24, they can move a lot faster, especially if the children happen to be 6 feet apart and are not bothering each other, touching each other, getting up and moving, etc., as much as they had been in the past. And by giving it a shorter day, that is truly accomplishable. So I really believe that we can focus with on education, and that our teachers will do an amazing job in that short time. So I think we can give our kids what they need with that and a hybrid model. I think that for the people that are concerned about, we're not giving them what they need and we should be open. I think that many places open too soon, and the ramifications are huge in those states. And I think if we start carefully and we can open up more because there isn't a problem, I think our county will open more and go to stage 4 if that's what Dr. Matthias is saying, that we're in a good place and we're at stage 4 and that qualifies for the state, then fine. I truly believe it's our children. We want them to be safe. And if we err on the side of safety and make sure they're healthy, then we can open up. But if we get kids sick because they're in a room that's 960 square feet, which is different than they've been in all summer with their families, they're going to be with 16 other kids if they were with 24 kids in 960 square feet for all day, that's a huge difference. And because this is airborne, they may not be coughing and sneezing, but they will be answering questions, they will be talking, etc. How can we do that to our children? I am so fearful. And yes, fearful is the word, because that's not my child, and I'm making this decision for those families. And I really believe we err on the side of safety, and then we open up as we see other school districts and the state and the country and the world. I mean, if you look all over the world, every place is dealing with this right now. It is not a Vacaville issue. And I guess that's all I have to say right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelley. Michael, I'm going to go to you next. But I will let you know that there was 3 speakers that were missed purely by time frame, and they were dropped off the chats as we began. And after Ms. Malberg, I'll let you, the 3 speakers, speak from there. Okay?
I'm happy to let them do it.
Are you? Fantastic. All right. So Alex Burles, student. Alex, give us a second. And hello, Alex. Good evening. Are you there?
Hello. Yes, I'm here.
Fantastic. Good evening, and you have 2 minutes. The floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. My name is Alexander Boris, and I'm an incoming junior at Vaca High. Last night, I sent an email to the school board voicing my concerns over the proposed plan for high school, which is being voted on tonight. This plan entails students taking 3 classes in the first quarter and their second 3 classes in the second quarter. Come January, students will be expected to have retained information that they may not have touched since 3 months prior. This plan is unrealistic and unfair. While teachers try and give us as much information as they can, they are left very little time to review or reteach. This plan adds unneeded stress to our lives as we transition into adulthood, and to me as a junior, it adds more stress to arguably the most important year of high school. Many issues also arise when it comes to leadership and the arts. Leadership students do so much for our school and will have to do more work at home when they are not in a quarter with their leadership period in it. Students in AP classes will be highly affected as well. AP classes will be even more difficult to excel in, making an AP test that already costs a lot of money even more difficult to pass. As mentioned earlier, a lot of work will have to be done outside of school to retain the learning done in the classroom. I myself am taking 5 AP classes next year. I also know that many of my other classmates are in the same boat. Vaca High prides itself in the opportunities it creates for students to be successful with all of the AP classes that it offers. With their proposed plan, success becomes very difficult to achieve. As my mom is a teacher here in the district, I've watched past board meetings and have heard past proposals. Last board meeting, a plan was proposed allowing students to see all of their teachers at least once each week. This seems to me and to many others that I've talked to be the best option, allowing for more support from all teachers and continued learning to retain information better. In making your decision tonight, all I ask is that the concerns of us high school students are heard and taken into consideration. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Alex. The next speaker is just a number 8675. No, that was a different one. Sorry. There's just a little slip there. How about 764435?
Hello.
And hello, anonymous caller. Are you there? Oh, did we mute them? Or
Can you hear me?
I got you. Hello. Could you
Okay.
introduce yourself?
Hi. My name is Alicia Walker. My focus has been not only to advocate for my kids, but for all kids. Prolonged periods of isolation and lack of instruction is detrimental. Children rely on schools for multiple needs, including education, nutrition, physical activity, socialization, and mental health. Students receive services for disabilities and other conditions that are virtually impossible to deliver online. Prolonging meaningful return to full-time in-person education would definitely result in hundreds of thousands of kids being at risk for worsening academic development and health outcomes. The only thing I've heard is all these plans. I haven't heard how you're going to enforce it. So if my son decides to take off his mask and not social distance from his friend, what punishments is the school going to lay down for my child? There's a check and balance system. When they don't be disrespectful, they get a demerit, they get detention. How is that all going to be enforced? I haven't heard any discussions of how you're going to enforce all these regulations and restrictions. These kids have been through so much. As a parent, I'm emotional, I'm distraught, and I've reached my tipping point. These kids need their teachers, they need their friends, and they need an education. And I thought in 2020, we should not be fighting for a fair education system because many have fought for this before. It's ridiculous. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Emma, and I'm not even going to try her last name. Emma G. How's that? All right, Emma, are you there?
Hi, can you guys hear me?
We've got you. Go ahead. The floor is
Okay.
yours.
Hello, my name's Emma Joya. I'm an incoming junior at Vacaville High School, and I have concerns surrounding the proposed school schedule that you guys are voting on tonight. I've already voiced my opinions to you guys and concerns to the board members via email, but I'm here to do the same. My main concern is that I am expected to remember first quarter information coming second semester, and this plan adds extra stress to my school year and other students' knowing that I am expected to memorize information on top of new material from the rest of my classes. Extra stress is being added to many students who have ambitious classes or students like me who have a hard time learning and memorizing information even in a normal class setting. This plan doesn't have a teacher's or a student's best interest in mind. Teachers are expected to cram students with information in the first quarter, limiting time for students to ask for necessary help or thoughtful and meaningful questions. I believe that the second semester will become more of reteaching from first quarter information and less reteaching and less less actual teaching. The second semester is seen as the most stressful time in school because AP tests and finals are floating in the back of our heads. My school prides in setting students up for success, but I do not think that this schedule sets students up for true success. A student's voice is vital to knowing what is truly best for a student's time at school. The year 2020 is hard enough as we are going through a global pandemic and a historical movement, and this is very tough for my generation and our mental health, and I believe that our voices need to be heard and that this plan needs to be changed. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Michael.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to stipulate that everything that everybody said about negative effects on children, I believe is true. There's no doubt about that. I have a son going into 11th grade, and there's no doubt about it that it would be better for him to be in school full time, doing extracurriculars. He does band, and I feel sad about that, and he feels sad about that. So I want to stipulate that it's bad. I think, I'm not going to claim any special wisdom about the science and what people say and all that kind of thing, but I'm just going to say what I see. And that's that since June 25th, which was 13 days ago, Solano County has had a 218% increase in its COVID cases, highest in the Bay Area. That's from Solano County's website. The positivity rate for the last week has gone to 14.4%. Okay, so yes. And that's important because the state recommends less than 8%, and it hasn't been even close to that until then. Dr. Machas, who Tracy was talking about, was quoted in the Daily Republic yesterday as saying that, yes, it's going to spike, and we can expect more hospitalizations because people are not following social distancing. And he says that most of it is people and their families are socializing. Okay, I don't know, that's what he said. Vacaville has gone from that same period of time from 145 cases to 282 cases, almost double in 13 days. So hospitalizations will follow. Even he said that, and I think he's pretty conservative, and I respect that, but he is. And probably not as much as it's been in the past because the statistics show that younger people are getting it now. Younger not being children mostly, younger people being 18 to 49 are getting it a lot more. So they don't usually get as sick as people that are 65 plus or 80 plus. So this is about, to me, as a board member, this is about students and it's about teachers, both. It's not just about students and it's not just about teachers, but teachers are at a lot more risk. We have 700 teachers about. So we have to think about that. We're responsible. I'm responsible for that as well as our children's education. It's a very hard thing to balance. And like I said, I understand parents and students' concerns about not getting the right education. Things have gotten much worse. You know, there have been other countries actually that have had to close schools. Israel's had to close schools. South Korea's had to close a lot of their schools. And their positivity rate and penetration rate is much lower. Somebody talked about, you can talk about Australia. Australia in Melbourne, they had 146 cases just yesterday, and they're going on lockdown for 6 weeks. Okay? To me, and I'm just saying, this is to me, if people can disagree, this is very serious, and it would be irresponsible for us to not consider how serious this is. Because I personally do not want to look 6 weeks or 6 months in the future and say, oh, well, we just decided to take a chance, and wow, it turned out a lot worse than we thought. So again, I just want to say I am extremely sorry for my child and everybody's child and the students also. And I just feel we have a responsibility for safety. And I also say that I am happy to revisit this at the quarter. I don't think we have to say we're doing this for the whole year. If things get better in 9 weeks, let's change it. I mean, we can do that. We have the power to do that. And I think what Tracy said, I agree with. She may disagree with how, but I think we should have a time where we officially look at it and say, okay, we're going to look at this again. And if the majority of us thinks it needs to be changed, then it'll be changed. And I just want to say again, I respect everybody. I got to say this a lot of times because I feel it's terrible. It's terrible to be up here right now. Whether you believe it's 100% or 50% or it should be virtual distance learning, this is a horrible place to be in. And don't feel sorry for me. I'm just telling you the truth. And I know that the superintendent feels that. I know that Ed feels that. And everybody in cabinet, all the teachers, and all the students. So it's terrible for all of us. And let's try to show a little compassion for each other. And we're doing the best we can. Thank you.
So Michael, if I don't fall into that 18 to 49 category, just a little bit out of it, does that make me old?
Yes.
Okay, good. I can move on.
Very old.
I'm good with that. Let's just accept it and move on. Ms. Sheree.
Okay, So no surprise to Cabinet, I am absolutely not a proponent. I'll get into that in a second. What I do want to first say to Cabinet is thank you for hearing me on the independent study, the virtual learning, and making that 9 weeks, not making that all in. I do appreciate that, and I recognize the changes there. Some of the questions, if I'm the minority tonight, and this is something we go forward with, is you guys, 8:40 to 1:30. By the time a parent drops a child off, they've got 2.5 hours if they're lucky before they have to turn around and come back and get them. It is not feasible in 99% of the households in this community. So I do not understand. I don't think the community's been represented here, and I don't see how this will work for our students. And we're coming off pushing. I was on the STAR board for years, and all we've preached is attendance and truancy. And here we are now saying we're setting parents up to not get their kids to school. This is not a good option for that. The last 10 weeks, COVID deaths have continued to decline. So yes, we're testing more, we're having a spike more, but people are not dying as of yet. And I understand that could change, and it will change because that's how we're going to get herd immunity. With that said, we have some fundamental differences on the board, and that's why we're so great, is we each come with our own, we're well-rounded. And I truly have the foundational belief that I am here to represent my constituents, which are the parents that have elected me into this position to take care of their children. And with that, if I do not represent and hear their voice in this spot, I'm not doing my job for them. And I have to go back to the parent survey. And so the question on the parent survey was, under the current levels of COVID in Solano County, which learning environment would you choose? 53% of them want students back full-time. Almost 12% want their kids online full-time. That's the majority. We had 15% say, I don't know, I can't decide yet. So undecided, 100% or 100% online, that is the large majority. So who do I think I am to sit in an ivory tower and think that I know better for your child than you do? So because of that, I can't touch this with a 10-foot pole. It just, in every part of me, is wrong. With that, do I love our staff? Do I care about our staff? 1,000%. Do I also see us as essential workers? Yeah, I do. And that's horribly hard. And I live with 2 essential workers. It is a terrifying thing. And it's a real fear. There's a lot of things that come into that. But it's unfortunately the world that we're living in right now. So the one other thing I just have to go, well, 2 other things. We have about 12,500 students. We have answers to 474 if every childcare that we've been presented with tonight is available. That's not a good percentage. So when we have parents who can't do the pickup, we don't have an option for them. And then the other thing is, I just have to go back to Dr. M. Well, 2 things. Vacaville, we're a military community. A lot of us come here, we don't have generations of family support. So not all of the people that are here, in fact, many people here don't have friends yet to call to have support to help with childcare. So this is a real issue in this community that is unique to others because we have Travis Air Force Base. I don't want us to lose sight of that either. And the last thing, Dr. M did say to us twice now, he would never have recommended closing schools. We overreacted. And so I still haven't heard from him to close schools. So he's the head of the county. And this is what our parents have asked for. So that's where I stand.
Ms. Stacy.
I regularly feel like I have to defend myself. So I just want to throw out there that I don't think any of us have implied that we want to just willy-nilly say, go back to school, the cards will fall where they fall. I think that Cabinet has done an incredible job and spent hours. And this isn't a reflection on the options given. I think that what has come to the surface for me is anything I've said, hold my darn feet to the fire, go do your own research. If I am all kinds of wrong, call me out. I'm cool with that. I'm just sharing what I have seen, what I have learned. And if, just for clarification, because everybody throws out numbers, but this is really important because 34,329 people in Solano County have been tested. As of 4:30 today, 1,826 are positive. That's a 5.3 positive rate. No, that's simple math. Like, that's not...
Did I say within the last 13 days?
It doesn't matter because overall, we can make 2 weeks look like anything we want. 2 weeks is not the overall picture for us to be making a decision for our families and children and for teachers. So this 2 week thing that we're getting spewed to doesn't mean squat. If the death rate is going down and the overall positivity rate is 5.3, it doesn't matter what the last 2 weeks said. Because here's the thing, we're talking about opening school, but we have to remember that all the same people who are now worried is we just opened up our community. We gave our community a whopping 2.5 weeks of phase 3 opening. We knew, don't misunderstand, the state knew that the positive rate was going to go up because there's more people around more people. We're leaving our bubbles. We're integrating. There is going to be more people testing positive. That's not new news. That's not a shock. So the death rate and the positivity rate absolutely matter when we're going to have an honest, transparent conversation about why we make a decision long term. So I just feel like I have to, context matters in this, and I agree with Cherie that we do represent the constituents, and our teachers vote for us too. And I think that because we're essential, I think that the surveys have given us a lot more options. And I hadn't thought of this until it really kind of came together for me. Teachers have the right to take that time because I totally respect everybody's individual needs. Maybe they have a chronic illness. Maybe they have a parent that they're taking care of at home. I work with seniors. It's a huge issue with all the people that we're working with. Having children or other loved ones who are immunization, compromised at home. But we are an essential service. So we would be totally remiss if we didn't consider childcare. And that's not a commentary on thinking that our teachers are daycare providers. It's just a social contract that's always been in place that school is school and people work, and that's just part of what we do. So how we answer that question, and I think we're the most proactive district. So I want to try to balance how proud I am of everybody and how difficult this is, because countywide, we did put ourselves under fire. We took our attorney and the public health officer and put them in front of us and took that so that everybody could hear the questions that we're asking. Nobody else did that. We've given us time because the plan from a month ago to now, the reason it's even getting better is because we've taken time. We've listened to more input, so we've had more ideas come forward. I think that's how we do things here, is that as we learn things change, we are flexible. So I think it's important for parents to hear, because I hadn't heard it, and I was putting on my parent hat. And there was, one of the comments was, how are you going to enforce all this stuff? This is overwhelming. I think what Ed was telling us was that we just need to figure out if we're even going back to school, how we're going back to school, and what that looks like. We perfectly understand to all the parents out there, we are not talking about masks. We're not talking about cleaning strategy. We're not talking about, a lot of different things, the mental health support that we might be able to do with COVID money, or the transportation we may be able to provide support to answer some of those things that we're just talking about getting back to school. So I think that might help people frame what we're trying to decide tonight. And I still think that I asked that question and no one's really responded. So Jane, Piers, we are holding ourselves to rules that we're making ourselves. So when I went to school, we started the day after Labor Day. The entire time I went to school. So if we're learning right now that we still aren't to that sweet spot where we're making as many people happy as we can, we haven't had enough time in our phased economy reopening to have enough data to make the best decision. Why do we have to start school August 6th or 8th?
So our calendar's negotiated with our teachers union.
Okay.
If we did want to push the date later, we just have to sit down and talk with the teachers union.
Cool.
It would mean, because we have to have 180 days, it would mean that they'd stay later in June or adjust some holidays, but it has to be a conversation.
So I guess I'm saying is that the circumstances dictate that. Going back to negotiation a hurdle that we should take off the table because it's that important for our community?
Is that the will of the board?
I don't know. I'm not even trying to be facetious or make our lives more difficult.
Yeah.
I'm actually asking honestly that if this is that important to us, why do we have to go back in August if the right thing to do is to say go back in September full time because we gave ourselves more time and we can answer more questions? And I just am asking. How does everybody else?
Mr. Silva, do you want to
Okay.
respond? Well, no, I gotta go. If you want everyone's opinion, I do. Can you restate your question?
Oh, okay. So the question is, if the barrier to starting school in August is negotiation, the teachers may say, forget it. Because here's the deal. I don't want to pit teachers or students and who's more important against each other. It's the worst place to be. But if we have to go back to the negotiating table to push our start date out, is that something we would want to do, or do we want to force this square peg into this hole?
I think the goal is to get our kids back to education, so I wouldn't support pushing off getting our kids back to access to education.
So can I ask another question? Because then the question I would push back is, if that's the case, then are we prepared for a mass exodus? Are we prepared to say to everybody, to Sean's point, to Cherie's point, to our parents' points, if people can't solve this problem, Kairos' 700 deep wait list just went to over 1,000, and XYZ homeschool cohort just VCS people, because we're not going to meet their needs. Not because they don't trust us or like us, but because it's just like practicality. And so this is still a business at the end of the day, and we still have customers that we're trying to serve. So is this something that we force if we're looking at big picture business decisions and safety and education decisions?
What will you do to prevent that from happening?
But that's like saying...
What will you do with your social media to prevent that from happening?
Prevent what happening?
This max exodus, to support this conflict.
Are you kidding? I am our cheerleader through and through, but let's be clear. Just if I'm a single mom or a 2 working household and it's educate my kids or leave them home because I can't do distance learning and they're immunocompromised, I guess I'm going to find the money. Because
that's very fortunate for you.
Not me personally.
Okay, hold on, let's do this.
Oh, I thought it was a response.
Well, you answered the question. Let's finish the question with everybody else and not.
So then I would say, I'll put the second half to that question, just so that everybody can answer it at one time, because I understand we're trying to do efficiency. It kind of goes back to that same argument of, if we can't control what everybody's doing outside of our school, then how far are we going to go for safety if we don't know what they're showing up with?
So I was looking for a direction from the board, whether or not you want to direct me to go work with the teachers union to discuss pushing back the calendar.
Right, that's what I'm trying to finish up. Ms. Cherie.
It feels like we're kicking the can farther down the road.
Okay.
Because I don't know what we're waiting for to change. You know what I'm saying? That's not clear cut. So for me, it's like kicking the can farther down.
Okay.
Michael.
Just with this?
Just that.
No, I think that we need to start school however we do it, however we agree. And I don't think waiting 2 weeks is going to make a difference either way. And anyway, during those 2 weeks, people would then be home with their kids. They couldn't work anyway. So, no, for me.
Mr. Wyndham.
I'm not sure. Really, at this point, I'm not really sure. If we're going to talk about it, it needs to be tonight. If the decision is going to be made, it needs to be tonight. Because I think, to Cherie's point, this thing has dragged on too long. I really would rather have some more dialogue, because for me, I have a different question, and I'll just leave it at that.
I'm not a proponent of waiting. I'd rather decide on a plan, move forward, like it or not. Let's get our kids back in front of the teachers and start progressing forward. So I'm not a fan of changing the calendar.
No.
Okay, yeah.
Shelley.
Miss Shelley.
Are you asking me to respond to that or
Yeah.
make a comment?
Both. Please answer the question first, and then you can have the floor.
Okay, Mike, to answer the question, I think what we've been saying all along is this is fluid. And so if indeed things get worse, I think we can make adjustments. And if things get drastically better and the state moves, we'll make adjustments. I think we need to start school when we said we were. So I know we've already said that we're going to move it to the 17th, I believe, from the 13th. Is that correct, Jane? The start of school?
Yes. Yeah, that was part of the plan.
Right. So the 17th is halfway through the month. So again, I don't think that much will change in those 2 weeks. I do want to say, as far as some of the comments made, Cherie, one of the things that Dr. M did say is that social distancing was the main thing that he advocated for. And there is no way you can social distance with 32 kids in a class or 24 in those rooms. And the other thing is, there has not been, in my knowledge, and please correct me if I'm wrong, an instance where 24 kids or 32 kids have been in a room for 5 hours a day with no social distancing. That's 960 square feet. I mean, that is so different. They're closing theaters back up. They're closing gyms back up. They're closing bars back up because they're finding that the transmission in those places is much more than they thought. So if you opened it 100% and just said kids could do whatever they wanted, interacting with each other and being in line closer and everything else, because if you're not going to social distance in the classroom, why social distance anyplace else? Then isn't that the same as what's already happening in the state and every place they've opened up? And I know people are saying, well, kids don't get it. Teachers are coming from different areas and different counties. They don't know if kids don't get it in when they're in a group of 32. We just haven't done that yet. So I still say start safe. And when he said that he wouldn't have closed, I think it wasn't his choice at that point. It was the state was saying we really do need to close schools, and we did what we thought was best for kids. And I think that it's not just about dying, it's about hospitalizations and long-term effects. And there have been many people that have said that they've experienced COVID and they have kidney problems, blood clot problems, stroke problems, fatigue problems, etc. And I really don't want the families in our community to have that. And if we can keep people from getting it by keeping our kids for 9 weeks or whatever, like I said, but like Michael said, I do believe we should review this and say, what's going on in our county? Is it getting safer? Are there not hospitalizations increasing? But if we want to start August 17th, I think that starting with the 50% model is probably the best bet, and then reevaluating. And I see people are upset on Zoom. I can see their faces, but I too have to take a stand. So that's where I'm standing.
Thank you, Shelley. Mr. Silva, hold on, there you go.
All right, Tracy, I apologize.
For what?
For, I don't know, my headphones are on. I think that I am in a great spot. I don't see this as a lose-lose situation. I see this as a possibility to create a win-win situation. COVID-19 funds are coming, is that correct? And that can be spent on anything that helps address anything related to our COVID emergency response, is that correct? So I think I see this as, the way I see this, and not to keep going on the same circle as far as the science and this and that, I see this as an opportunity to use these federal tax funds to reinvest in an opportunity to reform our education system and the opportunity to invest in enrichment programs to complement what our teachers will be doing within the class. So what I would suggest, and I would love to entertain, is to see our community partners that help address, that are offering to help address this, quote unquote daycare enrichment opportunity, to entertain the opportunity to see what they can provide, where we can team up and possibly even use those funds to buy supplies, and supplies with respect to coding, with respect to robotics, with respect to any other type of science kits, with respect to constructing stuff, with respect to learning. We have a new RISE program that's going to be starting at RISE, that's what's called, at Kimmy. There's an opportunity there where they're going to be looking for jobs. There's an opportunity for us to use those students' ability to teach them. They can learn, and then they can take that knowledge and pass it on to this new generation. So I see a possibility for us to use and access these resources that are being available to be able to address all of the concerns that I'm hearing, to make sure that our kids are being, their education is being addressed, and the fact that we can still possibly even support transportation. We can support the supplies that's needed in order to meet those needs, for whatever contracts, whatever proposals that come in. And these are things something that doesn't necessarily have to take our staff's time. Our staff can focus on the issues that are in class, with respect to providing the best education as possible And as an educator, I will say that it is much easier and much more productive to educate a smaller group of students than it is a much larger group of students, because you can give them that one-on-one time. That is something that that I've heard common that most parents want. They want smaller classroom sizes. Same thing with college. They want smaller classroom sizes. This is an opportunity to see that, to focus on the core fundamental concepts with our subjects and focus on how to actually develop that skill set within our students within that capacity. The other times of the day, again, I see a possibility for us to use those resources and invest in and focus on enrichment, which will help address these equitable issues that I love to hear now. I love to hear about the inequities that we're concerned about. Now we can actually start focus on enrichment programs, which have been proven to actually help address those equitable inequities, and not just for certain students, but for across the board. So maybe is that something that the board would feel comfortable looking into and entertaining, feedback from community partners such as Boys and Girls Club of what it would take to help meet that need. And the question of the problem is going to be access to different facilities. But I also know that there's plenty of open facilities that would be willing to accommodate that. It's going to require some staffing, but that's something that that these community agencies, these partners, these after-school programs, that they can look into and put forth the proposal to see how much they can accommodate. So.
Yes, any question? I don't understand the question.
I'm looking for support from the board to look at how we can use COVID-19 resources or other resources from the community to help focus on providing the other half of the day. So assuming we go to this 50% day where it's half a day or 3 days or whatever, we use these resources to invest in our kids, invest in enrichment opportunities that are typically outside of our budget scope, that are typically outside of our ability to address, because we're focusing on certain requirements. And these are going to be things that are outside maybe even ed code, or certain requirements that may have even have been laxed. So that way we can focus on, so that way we can basically attribute to enrichment. So the question is, for the board, would you support or entertain the district receiving this input from community partners to see how we can address these gaps, in addition to what was proposed?
I'll speak real quickly. I'd rather have input from our team first to see what our fiscal impacts is going to be from this to begin with. Just not spend all this money without knowing what this is actually going to cost us. Because I think there's some fees that are going to go along with this that we don't have laid out yet. And to have a conversation on how to spend that money, you betcha, I'm open for that, right, as a whole. But we got to really do that as a team to find out, hey, are we going to have to put some more money into nutrition? I know they're doing a great job. Mm-hmm. Is it going to cost us more money for transportation? So globally, you betcha, because I think that's important. That's a big chunk of money that we're getting in.
We will come back in August. We're trying to set up a meeting, a second meeting in August. We have one on the 6th, but we're trying to set up a second one to discuss specifically budget and facilities and the $4 million that we're getting to discuss that. We're collecting a list now. A lot of it has to do with the sanitation practices, but definitely we'll bring it back to the board. We definitely want to come discuss it with the board. And just as a side note, I like that idea. And I love our community partners that we work with Childcare. The only issue is the money has to all be spent by December. So yeah, that is. Materials, yes, I like materials, absolutely. Because if you start doing it, putting that money into staff, you can't sustain it, obviously. But we will talk about it in August. We want to bring it back to the board and have the conversation.
So knowing that, do you have to hear from the rest of the board, or are you good with that?
Can I just say one thing about it, John?
Sure, Michael. Thanks.
You have to turn me on. Oh, there we go.
Thank you.
Mike, the only thing I want to say about that is, I mean, I think it's potentially got some great, ideas in there, and maybe during that time, because you have it in your head, you've thought about this a lot, it wasn't super understandable exactly what on a granular level, like kind of what you meant. So maybe like any of us can, I mean, maybe make an appointment with Jane and sit down with her and try to, kind of explain what your vision is. And then when it comes in August, when we talk about it, then, her team will actually be aware of it.
Good. Okay. Sean.
Thank you. So I want to start out with saying something I've said before, but I think it's worth mentioning again, and that is that I think we all have to recognize, as passionate as we all are about certain aspects of moving forward, this isn't something that any of us chose. This isn't something that any of us anticipated or planned for. So this is really building the plane, so to speak, as we're flying it. So I want to really mention that. I do, though, think it's important to put some context, because I think numbers, the problem, the concern I have with this COVID issue, and I need to explain this to explain to you that why this plan doesn't work for me and I can't support it, and what I am asking for me personally as a board member. But I think, so I looked at the numbers and they did change. I had to redo my math real quick, so forgive me, because math was not my best subject, so my numbers might be a little off. I tried to round up, right? I am mathematically challenged, so if Brenda's watching, correct me later. But you've already heard the numbers, but I think when you put in context the percentage, so in Solano County, as of today, the latest information, rounding up, the known infection rate is 0.5%. It's 0.5%, the infection rate. The mortality rate is 0.007% in Solano County. What's that?
Your math, it is 5%.
I just said 5%. You're not Brenda. You have to be quiet. All right. Let's just say 6% infection rate. I mean, I guess the point that I'm making here, I don't want to minimize the impact that this virus has had on the community, on the nation, and there's been deaths. But I also think that you need to put context to what the trends are that we're seeing. And I want to read a couple things here because, and I want to preface this by saying, we've had a lot of conversation, debate about the science. And the problem is, from this perspective, what's really difficult is I hear different things from different organizations. And there are organizations that in the past I've always thought were kind of trustworthy. So it is difficult to ferret out what is accurate, what is not. So I want to read this, and this all comes from the American Academy of Pediatrics. And this is a quote from what they recently put out with regard to reopening schools. They said that although children and adolescents play a major role in amplifying influenza outbreaks, to date, this does not appear to be the case with SARS-CoV-2 or COVID-19. Although many questions remain, the preponderance of evidence indicates that children and adolescents are less likely to be symptomatic and less likely to have severe disease resulting from SARS-CoV-2 infection. In addition, children may be less likely to become infected and to spread infection. Makes sense because they don't have the symptoms. So if they're asymptomatic, they're not coughing and sneezing. It doesn't mean that they're not potentially going to transmit, right? I've made the comment before, there's no such thing as zero risk. Zero risk doesn't exist anywhere. I mean, we're all at risk of something in some way, okay? There's a couple other things that I think is important here. This is also from the American Academy of Pediatrics. And they say evidence suggests that spacing as close to 3 feet may approach the benefits of 6 feet of space, particularly if students are wearing face coverings and are asymptomatic. Schools should weigh the benefits of strict adherence to a 6 feet spacing rule between students with the potential downside if remote learning is the only alternative. Strict adherence to a specific size of student groups, and they give the example of 10 per class, 15 per class, should be discouraged in favor of other risk mitigation strategies. Given what is known about transmission dynamics, adults and adult staff within schools should attempt to maintain a distance of 6 feet from other persons as much as possible, particularly around other adult staff. So there is a distinction between what's safer for adults versus what's safer for students. And I think that's an important distinction because there is a difference between staff safety and student safety. And I kind of feel like we really haven't had a lot of discussion around those differences because they are very important, they are very distinct. And I'm not an expert, and I think several of us have said that, but these folks are experts. I mean, they're pediatricians. I'm assuming they're experts. If they're not, we're all in trouble. And this is what they are saying. Now, I also want to kind of refer back to the parent study. And by the way, I want to say something to the staff and specifically to the teachers, because we've gotten a lot of emails. And I think there was a comment tonight about not returning emails. I don't think it's humanly possible to return the amount of emails that we get. It's just not without the boilerplate, thanks. I mean, there's so many. But a lot of teachers have sent emails, and their concerns are around opening schools at 100%. Just open them up, open the doors, and it's back to normal. I'll just speak for me here. I don't think anybody has said back to normal, because I don't think there's no normal right now. There's not gonna be back to normal. There's been a lot of use of this term new normal, and I think to a large extent that's true. So we've heard that, COVID probably is a year to 2 years, if at all, from disappearing. And even if it does, we may see a COVID season like we do a flu season. That's what I think Dr. Rim said and some other experts have said, because they don't know how long the antibodies prevent you, or if they even do prevent you from getting reinfected. We're so far away from a vaccine. If we have one with antibodies, we don't know what that means, and if that protects you, and if so, for how long. So those things, those concepts of a vaccine being kind of this is the time that things are going to be safe, that's so far down the road that we don't know if that even comes to fruition. So I'm not suggesting, and I don't think anybody has, that we just throw open the doors, go back to the way life was back in February, because I don't think that's possible. And I think that might be the message that staff heard from some of us, and maybe specifically for me, and that wasn't what I was intending to convey. But what I am advocating for, I'm looking at the parent survey, and I'm looking at the things that I just read, the differences between the infection rates and the risk for students versus staff, okay? Knowing that there's a difference. So I'm not suggesting that staff and teachers are going to be teaching, regardless if it's 1 day a week or 5 days a week, in the same methodology, in the same manner, in the same circumstances as they were before this all started, because that's not the case. But I'm looking here, and I'm looking at the parent survey, and it says the question is, if VUSD started school with all students full-time with no social distancing, but with precautions in place, what would you choose? 59.7 or 3,069 folks said, we want to come back to school, and we want to come back full-time. So I guess my frustration to this whole thing is, if that is the case, I understand this 50% model is something we've really looked at, and I understand why. But my concern is, I understand the state, and I've heard a lot of comments about the state. And if you know me, you know how I feel about the state of California, so I'm just going to put that out there. However, the state of California is making a decision that applies as equal to San Diego as it does to us, as it does to Humboldt, for 39 to 40 million people. I don't know what the current, that's things are very different in different places. So there is no one size fits all in this size of a state. So what the state says to me, it's important, it's interesting, but it does not necessarily apply in every community, specifically in ours, because I just talked about the data here locally. So before I get to what I'm asking for tonight, and I'm kind of making one last plea for, and because I think it's important, you have to remember that we exist as a local governing body for a reason, right? There's a reason why there's local governance, because it isn't a one size fits all. It isn't Sacramento dictates for the entire state of California. If that were the case, there would be no differences, and maybe some people would like to live that way. I wouldn't. I think it's very important to have local leaders that are accountable to people that live in the communities, that can react to circumstances in their community. And that's what I'm suggesting here, is that we need to react to what's happening in our community. We are not New York. We are not LA. Could we get to that point? Yes, we could. I hope and pray we don't. And if we do, we have to react to that. But the other side of things and I know I'm taking a long time, but this is important to me. You have to consider that at what point are we going to continue to change our lives to such a degree that we're negatively impacting ourselves, not just financially. We are losing education that we may not be able to get back. I mean, at some point, we're not going to be able to reverse that. We are losing students to depression. We are losing social interaction that is causing depression, that is causing a lack of social skills. And believe me, we don't need that right now. So at what point is that sacrifice worth it? And I don't have the answer. I mean, in large part, that's rhetorical. But I will say this. At some point, we have to decide what is essential, what is critical, and what is a risk that is necessary to maintain our society, our lifestyle, and our way of life that we want. It's a really bad place to be, and it's a really tough decision to be in. But at the end of the day, that's what this decision is part of here. Okay? So we really have to decide what is essential, what is critical. Now, that might be easy for me to say because I've been in a career field for the last 29 years that is quote unquote essential. So I've never had the choice of not going to work because of something. And I'm not trying to make light of those that haven't. But, I never thought that truck drivers and that people that work in delivery professions and in warehouses would be essential and at risk and have to put themselves at risk to maintain life and society. But that's what happened. And that's what those people had to do. And that's what they did. So, I think that the balance here is for what I'm asking for teachers, for staff, and for everybody is to really ask yourselves and dig deep, what is the point when education, to bring it back to what we're talking about tonight, is so important that we need to take some degree of risk with precautions that are as strict as we can possibly make them to protect ourselves to the maximum possibility, right? Okay? So what I'm asking for, I'm saying all that for this, what I'm asking for is if it's true that let's round this number, because I like to round up because numbers, I don't like numbers anyway, so I'm bad with them, so I got to round up. So let's just say 60% of parents say, man, we got to send our kids back. I would be one of those parents. And by the way, I'm married to somebody who is immune compromised. You could argue that I am. I have asthma, and I'm on a medication now for something that actually suppresses your immune system, so I kind of understand. Not to the degree that a lot of folks. I don't want to get that twisted. But if 60% say we need to send our kids back to school, then why can't we find the compromise of, because there are going to be kids that shouldn't come back to school. They are immunocompromised. They have folks in their home that are immunocompromised that they should not be exposed to. There are staff that are in the same position. So I think we need to find that balance of giving parents the respect of making the choice and giving students the respect of choosing what's right for them and what risk level. Because at the end of the day, whatever decision this board makes, we are making the decision for people. And if we choose one of these options, then parents don't have the choice to send their kids to school 5 days a week or whatever they choose, whatever they feel comfortable doing. And quite frankly, as a parent, I have a huge issue with that. And I think it goes against the local government concept. So I'm asking for, if we have 60% that say, I want to send my kid back to school, then why can't we come up with a plan that says 60%, 5 days a week, let's figure it out. I mean, I understand for staff, that's easy for me to say, right? I get it. And maybe it isn't 6 feet. Maybe it's more along the lines of, because again, are we saying 6 feet for adults and 6 feet for kids, but we have pediatricians saying, well, maybe 6 feet isn't totally necessary for kids, but it sure is for adults. So I just think there's a compromise in there somewhere, because at some point, people have to be able to decide for themselves and exercise the freedom that so far we still have in this country to be able to decide at what point do I get to live my life, and at what point am I able to make that choice. So that's it for me for now. Thanks.
Stacy. So, two things. Yes, but I also am wondering, that does throw a curve in, like that there's not a plan to show people to take that vote. So again, I just thought just reconsider our time frame, even if it's like we have another meeting next week, because we're going to have to do some hard work and make some hard decisions. So however the vote fleshes out, I just say it's just as important to me and everybody else up here, but I agree with Sean. I don't care if we have to meet every day till we sort it out. I think our kids are that important. Our teachers deserve, everybody involved, our community deserves for us to figure this out. So I just want to say that I want to add some more stuff, because there's been a lot of questions of like everybody's doing it. So I just everybody can just look up the Lancet study. And I think Sean's point, I guess, I'm sorry, I will try to make it all make sense here in a minute. There's so much in there. Can we have a special board workshop at some point when the decision of how we go back to school happens? can we have a workshop around the budget, the COVID budget, and ancillary short-term services or projects or pilots that we want to put in place to support whatever version of how we go back to school for that 6 months between now and December, right? For that money, so that we can have great debate, get input, and really brainstorm, like take feedback from, right? I just think that it would be worthy of its own meeting, so we can talk about feasibility and need, to Dawn's point.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'm free Saturday, all day.
I will be here if you tell me to be. So I just want to throw that out there, that I feel like we have an urgency to do that, so that.
But I think you already said
No.
that we'll have a meeting about it.
No, I'm talking not a board meeting. I'm talking about a special board workshop, so because we are talkers and thinkers and askers, and we need time.
And, you know, I also defer to President John Jansen, if that's something you want to set up. I mean,
Well, I'll do a straw poll again.
So, but you can be mad. It's okay.
I'm not mad.
Oh,
and
I
are we
read it
saying-
wrong. Sorry.
Just, Tracy, for clarification, so we're saying a board workshop to discuss the plan overall?
Right, the details, the minutia, the stuff that we aren't talking about tonight, but that, there's lots of questions. People are gonna have lots of questions on implementation and ancillary services to support how we're successful when we go back. I think that deserves a meeting. So I just wanted to put, we don't have to decide that right now, but before the night's over, maybe decide if we can have a workshop about that. And then, go ahead.
Can I respond to that?
Michael.
I am for the meeting that you were talking about, because 4.7 million is a lot of money that has to be spent in a very short period of time. And I think you definitely need input from the board based on what you bring forward. But I am very wary about if we go and give you the, if we say, go with it, we're going to vote on this plan, go for it, then come back and pick apart the plan, the minutia of the plan that you put together. I'm kind of uncomfortable with that. I mean, it's not.
Okay, so let me explain my logic. So my logic is we're doing that right now. We didn't sit at the table in the committee. People put a lot of work and effort in. The committee spun their wheels. They had this debate, but we weren't there, so we didn't give their input on the front end of the debate.
Right, so we're
that
doing it
exact
now, and then
conundrum
we're
is
gonna
still
vote on it.
is pulling apart a plan that we weren't part. So if we have a board workshop, we give our opinions. Then they can take the needs of the district and bring a plan that has input without having to go back to the drawing board like we're pretty much potentially asking them to do tonight.
We'll see when we vote. Can I?
But okay, yeah.
Mr. Sean.
Tracy, no, I agree with you that we probably need to have those conversations, but I think tonight, one of the things that just for me that I'm concerned about is I think tonight we need to decide either on this plan or what we're going to direct the district to do, and then I think we have those conversations.
Yes.
Because I think a lot of the conversations and ideas that have come from Mr. Sullivan, from you, I mean, they're great, but before we get to that, we need to decide what are we going to direct as far as a reopening plan, and then I think that's a good.
I just want it on record, so whatever the plan is, we can have the money conversation.
I think a lot of that will come from them once we give them direction, whichever way it goes. Then they can start working on the minutia, as you call it. But once we pick a direction, then they can move forward from there.
Okay. So what I wanted to say though too is that was just a request, but that look up the Lancet study, and I think that Sean hit the nail on the head that it is different levels of risk because there are 82 countries. I think it was 82 healthcare institutions over 25 European countries through the month of April when they were at their peak studied pediatric response to COVID. So there is data out there, there is information out there, and it does matter because we solve different problems. So I'm with everybody else. At this point, I guess we're just going to call this vote at some point and let the cards fall where they're going to fall.
Watch your language.
I did not cuss.
Ed, get off your phone. I have a question for you. Just like in school, no phones allowed. That's all right. Hey, a couple questions came up around the AP tonight. It's kind of important. Now, when they're done, I take if we were to go 50%, I take an AP class my first semester. Does that go all the way through the year, or is that one block and I'm done with my AP class?
No, well, they would have the second semester either another 9-week block, or if we're back to more normal, then they'd have the class the rest of the year. From an AP perspective,
From what was proposed,
if we
I
stay
would
in there
take
the
it for-
whole year, they would get another 9 weeks of that AP class, because those are all year-long classes.
in a row.
No, so they would get, if they did it the first
9 weeks.
9 weeks, then the second 9 weeks, they're taking other classes.
So they would get a break in there.
Yeah, and then the third 9 weeks, they would take it again.
Okay. I had some questions on transportation, but I think that'll be figured out once, whichever way we go on the plan. And then on the special ed, I had some questions that you guys had answered. Thank you very much. But if someone needs to get pulled out for resource, is that going to be done during this block time that they're in there? Or are they going to be expected to stay after? What's the?
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Okay.
What's the
I think
game plan?
it's going to depend. And so we want to make sure that for all students with IEPs, we maximize the amount of special ed minutes that they have on their IEP, that they have access to as much of those as possible. So once we have a plan and a direction moving forward, principals and case managers are going to have to look at schedules and figure out how we're going to operate our resource programs. For the elementary students, it's a little bit different because they are pulled out typically or push in support in the classroom. And so wanting to make sure we work with families. There may be some students that do stay after their general ed time, or maybe they come before their general ed time with that flexibility. So I think just like resource teachers do at the beginning of every school year, they'll take into account their caseload, figure out where those students are all attending class, what time, and then work out groups and then work with families to be able to do that. For secondary, it's a little bit different because our resource classes are typically periods. So if they're getting their resource minutes in their first period class, then they will have that the first 9 weeks. And they typically take a blend of general ed and special ed classes at the secondary level. Does that answer it?
Yeah, thank you, Sasha. Okay. Michael, you're on the list. Did you want to speak, or is your mic just open?
No, I'm good.
Okay, and Ed, I'm good. Thank you very much for coming up. Okay. Any other questions? Hold on. There you go.
I think that kids can be very resilient. One of the things that I've learned, serving on this board is, again, we're around our own quote unquote circles, and I think many times that really excludes us from being able to look at things from a different point of view. And while kids go through a lot, I think that there's many ways that we as a community can come together to help address those needs, where the term was all hands on deck, right? So I think throughout America's history, we've had many tragic events. And I remember as a kid, I'd seen the 1989 earthquake. People showed up to help people out. I've seen issues where just neighbors coming around to help people out. I've seen how the country came together during 9/11. And for me, what I would hope to see within our community is how do we actually look out for each other? And how do we find ways, again, to fill those gaps that we need as families to make sure that we as a community are still here? Not that we have this divisiveness to where we're only focusing on, our certain point of views and our certain interpretations. And, I think there's a great opportunity for us to really look at how do we actually help maintain that sense of community that we have here, that we love, of why we live here, and how do we still make sure that our kids' needs are met. And I think that in addition to that, I struggled in high school for different reasons. And one of the things that I learned, that I take very well, that I learned from on this board was that, being able to work and earn something there's value in that. I do value work. So I value work, and I value what comes out of that. And to me, I see these not as barriers. I've lived with many barriers. I've have a lot of kids as younger. I've seen true, deep, dark barriers. And, for me, I see this opportunity for us to help address these barriers as a community. And I think that should be the focus. what we decide, how do we decide to where we actually look out for each other? How do we decide that, how do we go about supporting as a community to take care of our neighbors? That's what I hope I would encourage everyone to really focus on, as we move forward.
Okay, Miss Shelley brought up a point that there's some people wanting to ask questions on Zoom, and I'm just going to explain that once the comment cards were all taken, it's not an open discussion. So although you may have questions, I'm sorry that that time has passed for that. Where do I stand? I think it's a difficult decision. It's a no-win decision. I'm not going to quote any numbers because they've all been quoted one way or the other tonight. I am personally not comfortable with going back to 100%. I think this may be a moot point in a week or two. If the government tells us we're going to do it and then we're mandated, then we do it and we move on. That takes care of a couple issues. If we're mandated to do it, then I'm sorry for the teachers that want that built-in safety. It's just not there if we're mandated to do it. But we do have the option right now to offer some protection, not only to the teachers, but to the staff, and social distancing is important. And the only way we can deal with social distancing is by keeping them at 50% and going forward from there. I've got a couple grandkids, Rugrats at Callison, and I think with the social distancing, I have no worries about sending them back at all. And that's basically kind of where I stand. And for those emails I did respond to, you basically heard the same thing. There was nothing really different there. So with that, I'd like to make a motion to move forward with the plan as presented. Second. There's a motion by Jansen, second by Kitsis. Roll call vote. Questions before we move forward? Shelley, anything?
I'm here. I don't have any questions. Do you want my vote?
Roll call vote, please.
Mrs.
Dell?
Me?
Mrs. Dell, your vote, please.
I vote for 50%.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Wyndham?
No.
Mr. Kitsis?
Yes.
Mrs. Stacy?
No.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mrs. Mulberg? And Mr. Jensen?
Yes. Okay.
So the motion passes 4-3.
Thank you. With that, that closes 6A. We'll move on to 6B, approval of the quote with CDI Technologies for the purchase of technology equipment. This is a Measure A item. It's recommended the board approve the quote with CDI Technologies in the amount not... That's right. A lot of my women in my life do that. And moved by Malberg, second by Wyndham. Roll call vote. Shelley, thumbs up.
Thank you. That's a yes. Mr. Wyndham? Yes. Mr. Kitsis?
Yes.
Mrs. Stacy?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mrs. Mulberg?
Yes.
Mr. Jensen?
Yes. Consent items, we have a few items on there. Requested that the board approve the consent calendar as presented. Do I have a motion? Moved by Silva, second by Malberg. All roll call vote. Shelley?
Ms. Dillon,
Thumbs
thank
up.
you. That's a yes. Mr. Wyndham? Yes. Mr. Kitsis?
Yes.
Mrs. Stacy?
Yes.
Mr. Silva?
Yes.
Mrs. Mulberg?
Yes.
Mr. Jansen?
Yes. And thank you very much for everybody that participated on Zoom and in public. We appreciate your comments. And that'll adjourn the meeting. Good night, Vacaville.